Chapter 441. Rosefinch Secondary. The best private secondary school in Heartwarming. There was no other. The 10th of September was a joyous day for the new students. One by one, the lucky students who received the admission notice from Rosefinch Secondary arrived at the school gate accompanied by their parents and family members. They looked at the bright golden words Rosefinch Secondary hanging above the school gate with admiration and joy. After years of hard work, they finally entered the famous school that they dreamed of. Their hearts ached, but they wouldn't cry tears of joy again. Because they had already done this before. Even the parents of the students couldn't help but stop their hurried footsteps and stand beside their son or daughter. They couldn't help but sigh proudly. It's not easy to enter Rosefinch High School. All the students knew that being able to enter Rosefinch High School was equivalent to having one foot in the door of a university. As for the other foot, it was just a matter of deciding which famous school to enter. Rosefinch Secondary had the most powerful teachers, the most advanced facilities, and the most open and free learning atmosphere. Here, no teachers would force you to learn anything. They would only guide you to take the initiative to be interested in a certain field. You could write poems or draw. You could practice calligraphy. You could be proficient in a foreign language. You could study history or chess. You could do whatever you wanted to do and unleash your passion for learning. Because you would find that when you do the things you like, you would need a lot of knowledge and preparation. The deeper your love, the more thorough your research, the more you would feel weak and insignificant. You would be like a hungry monster that opened its huge mouth, hoping to swallow all the knowledge into its stomach. The new principal of Rosefinch High School once said this in the media: every student is a treasure house, and the teacher is the key to this treasure house. If the teacher treated himself as a treasure house and the students as a warehouse to transfer their wealth, then the wealth in the warehouse would become less and less. In the end, the warehouse would become unsightly and pitiful. Senior brothers and sisters in white shirts, blue uniforms, and black ties were busily making their way through the crowd, attentively guiding the new juniors to go through various procedures and introducing some related facilities and club information of the school. Our school has a literature club. The famous writer Liu Xiaofan is the honorary president of our literature club. The current president is the youth best-selling author Luo Yi. The standard of our school's Go Club is quite high. This year, we represented Heartwarming in the International Youth Go Tournament in Japan and won the first prize for both the individual and the team. Oh, this is already the second year that we've won a Grand Slam. The Tea Ceremony Club was established by Senior Chinitian. Do you know Senior Chinitian? Back then, he was a legendary figure in our flower city. What? You guys know Senior Sister Etienne. Anyway, if you like the tea ceremony, you can go and sign up. Let's not talk about other things. The beauties in the Tea Ceremony Society are the most elegant. A man in a black robe stood at the gate of Rosefinch Secondary. He looked at the ancient gate of Rosefinch Secondary in silence. His eyes were clear and pure. It was easy for people to have a good impression of him. But when you looked into his eyes, you would find that the pool was deep and boundless. If you were not careful, you would fall into it and be unable to get out. His chin was clean-shaven. There was only a light green stubble left. His body stood perfectly straight, like a spear that would never bend, like a pine tree that could support the heavens and the earth. This was a very contradictory personality. He had the demeanor of a young man, but he also had the experience of an adult. These two characteristics fused together to form his unique charm. "Hey!" a clear voice called out from behind him. The man in the robe turned around and saw a beautiful girl talking to him. The girl was wearing a set of white sportswear, a pair of white canvas shoes, and a red cap on her head. Her face was rosy, and there were fine beads of sweat on her forehead. She exuded a youthful aura. There was a Hello Kitty suitcase beside her feet. She should be one of the new students who came to Rosefinch Secondary today. Are you talking to me? The man in the robe looked around and doubtfully asked. If I'm not talking to you, who else could it be? The girl giggled. There's no one else in front of me. Are you talking to a ghost? What's the matter? The man in the robe silently laughed and asked. You're so strange, the girl said. I've been staring at you, you've been staring at the gate of this school. You've been standing here for a while now, not saying a word, not moving at all. What are you thinking about? I was also standing here 3 years ago, the man in the robe said. He was also standing here 3 years ago. At the time, he was in a good mood and felt refreshed. Being bullied by a violent woman was already a big deal. 3 years later, things are still the same, but people have changed. 3 years ago. Ah, you're also a student of Rosefinch Secondary. Then you're my senior. Senior, which university are you studying at right now? I heard that Rosefinch High's university entrance exam results have been quite good these past few years. There was even a class that was 100% accepted into a famous school, shocking the entire education world at the time. The man in the robe lightly shook his head and spoke with a nostalgic tone. I'm not a student, not a student. I'm a teacher at Rosefinch High, the man in the robe said. Ah, the girl opened her eyes wide and said, no way. You're a teacher. How come I can't tell at all? The girl was thinking that it would be lucky to have such a handsome teacher at school. The man in the robe chuckled and said nothing. I'm Suki. Then you, what's your name? The man didn't answer her question and said, goodbye. Saying so, the man walked towards the gate of Rosefinch Secondary. How annoying, the girl stomped her foot in annoyance and said, you still haven't told me your name. The old man in the robe didn't hear her complaint because his figure was already far away. In front of the school's security booth, a man in a green security uniform was lecturing a few punks with blonde hair with a serious expression and said, you brats want to break into the school again, don't blame me for not telling you. What is this place? It's a place for students to learn, a place to train talents for the country. You don't study properly, you don't find a good job outside, instead you want to run into the school all day to harm the girls inside. How can you do that? Harm. A blonde with a row of shiny earrings on his right ear sneered and said, I say, Baldy, do you know how to talk? I'm here to visit my girlfriend, how am I a harm? We're in love with each other, do you know what in love with each other is? You don't, right? Look at you, a coward with weeds growing on his head, probably no girl will like you in this lifetime. You call that in love with each other? You pursued Li Jingjing, a second-year student, and she was so scared that she avoided you. Because you guarded the school gate all day, Li Jingjing didn't dare to go home for several days. I say, you guys should do some good and let the girl study in peace, and not worry about you punks all day, or else, I'll send you to the police station. The punks looked at each other and then laughed. Brother Xing, he said he'll send us to the police station, I'm so scared. Police station? What is that place? Have we been there? Is there a buffet inside? Brother Xing likes to visit the police station when he has nothing to do, we're familiar with that place. Baldy, do you want me to take you in for a tour? The man with the earring pointed at Baldy with an arrogant expression and said, I say, Baldy, don't blame me, Brother Xiaoxing, for not giving you face. Since you've said it, then send me to the police station. If I beg you for mercy, you'll be my biological father. Baldy was so angry that his face turned red, and his body trembled. He pulled out the baton at his waist and said angrily, I'm telling you, as long as I, Baldy, guard the school gate, you hooligans won't be able to step into the school gate. I can't go in even if you guard the school gate, but you can't do anything outside the school, right? Is it illegal for me to pursue a girl outside the school? I don't care if it's inside or outside the school, I won't allow you to bully the students of our school, or else, I'll call the police and arrest all of you. Who do you think you are? You're just the school's security captain, not Watching's police chief. Damn Baldy, you can't control me. Before the earring man's voice died away, his body had already left the ground. He wanted to speak, but he found that the back of his neck was being strangled. He couldn't struggle, couldn't speak, and even had difficulty breathing. His lackeys saw that their big brother was being humiliated, and immediately rushed toward their target. Bang! The first hooligan who rushed up was kicked away. He was flying freely in the air, and it seemed that he wouldn't land for a while. Crack! The second hooligan who rushed up was punched in the nose, and the sound of his nose breaking was sharp and ear-piercing. Paw! The third hooligan who rushed halfway wanted to turn around and run away, but his butt was kicked. His body rolled on the ground, and then he fell to the ground in an extremely embarrassing manner. The other hooligans were silent, and their faces were full of fear. They stood still and didn't dare to move. The man in the robe pulled out the little black tie from the earring man's neck, and skillfully tied his hands and feet with the bundling technique, making him look like a dumpling. Then he carried the big dumpling and hung it on the old locust tree at the entrance of the conservative pavilion, and said, "Hang it here, is the tree okay?" He was afraid that the old locust tree couldn't bear the weight of the earring man's body, and the trunk would be crushed. Baldy's eyes were red, and he rushed up to pull the arm of the man in the robe, and said in a choked voice, "Fong Yen, you're finally back." Chapter 442. The guy you hung on the tree is called Li Xiaoxing. He's a famous gangster in this area. He's always around the school. Recently, he's been pursuing a girl called Li Jingjing. That girl is very afraid of him. She's too scared to go out. Baldy didn't know where he learned this bad habit of grabbing someone's sleeve and not letting go. It was as if he was afraid that Fong Yen would disappear again if he let go. With me, Baldy, there's no way he can enter our school. But it's not good for them to keep guarding outside the school. I can take care of the school, but who can take care of the things outside the school? Call the police. It's useless. That guy is a habitual offender. He's been in and out of the police station several times. He didn't do anything serious. The police can't do anything to him. A red light flashed in Fong Yan's eyes, but he didn't respond to Baldy's question. Principal's office. Zhong Dai placed a cup of hot tea in front of Fong Yan. He then sat on the sofa opposite him and looked at him seriously. After a long silence, he said with a sigh, "Fong Yan, it's been 3 years. We've been waiting for you for 3 years. You're finally back." Fong Yixing died in battle. Fong Yan stayed in Swallow Dock to mourn for 3 years. 3 years had changed too many people, and too many things had happened. The old principal of Rosefinch Secondary, Zhang Xiaofeng, retired. Before he retired, he invited the former principal of Ivy League School, Zhong Dai, to be the new principal of Rosefinch according to the agreement he made with Fong Yan. Zhong Dai was indeed a famous madman principal in Huaqing's education circle. After he came to Rosefinch, he carried out bold and decisive reforms. The good ones were promoted and the bad ones were cut down. He handed in a beautiful answer sheet in the shortest time possible. The teachers and students of Rosefinch, who were originally dissatisfied or hostile towards him, looked at him in a new light. Rosefinch High School's performance over the past 3 years had been outstanding in Huaqing's education circle. Regardless of whether it was its results or its reputation, it had become the private high school of choice for Huaqing students. There were even many parents who traveled a great distance to ask for their children's education. In the past, I never had the chance to talk to him properly, so I spent 3 years by his side. Fong Yan's voice was calm and gentle, and there was no emotion on his face. However, there was still a trace of sorrow in his eyes that was difficult to dissolve. I talked a great deal to him, and heard him talk a great deal to me. I felt I understood him better. She wanted to know what kind of person he was. Isn't it too slow and cruel for you to only understand what kind of person the most important person in your life is? Zhongde sighed softly and said, regarding your father's matter, I also feel very sorry in my heart. Filial piety is the way of human relationships. I can't blame you for doing something wrong. But you have to know that there are many students waiting for you here. They waited for you for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. They waited for you for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. They asked the school countless times, why didn't Mr. Fong come back? Why didn't Mr. Fong come back? They couldn't get through to your phone, and they didn't have your contact information, so they could only ask the school again and again. They waited from the first year to the second year, and from the second year to the third year. In the end, they didn't manage to wait for you. This year, they all took the exam, except for Qin Etienne who didn't participate in the exam. The entire class of 40 students were all admitted to famous universities in various fields. They became the college entrance examination legends of our Huaqing's education circle, or rather, the entire Huaxia's education circle. Zhongde revealed an excited expression and said, to us educators, this is such a good group of students. Unfortunately, your teacher-student relationship is still too short. If you could take care of them for 3 years and personally send them to the examination hall, what kind of ability would they display? What kind of people would they become? How many writers would there be? How many philosophers would there be? How many mathematicians or calligraphers would there be? Fong Yan chuckled and said, when I wasn't there, they still did very well in the exam. The master leads the way, but cultivation is up to the individual. I told them how to study, and I drew out their passion for knowledge. They could still do very well without me. When you weren't there, they were all suppressing a certain energy in their hearts. Zhongde shook his head and said, I've seen your file. You didn't stay in Rosefinch for a long time, but you are indeed a very talented teacher. Your scenario simulation method is very effective, and now I've already promoted it to the whole school in Rosefinch. Other schools also come to us to secretly learn from you. I'm very happy that you can come back. What are your plans? Today is the day for new students to enter the school, and another batch of students entered Rosefinch to further their studies. I'll give you a class. Or 2. Fong Yan rejected and said, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. You don't want to be a teacher anymore. Then what do you want to do? Zhongde looked at Fong Yan with a puzzled expression and said, Fong Yan, Zhongde, rarely admire people, but I have to admit that you do have a lot of ideas in teaching and educating people. I'm far inferior to you in this aspect. Be a teacher and train a few more outstanding students for our Rosefinch, okay? I'll be a security guard. Fong Yan said. Fong Yan walked out of the headmaster's office. Baldy, who sent him here, was still guarding the entrance of the administrative building. Seeing Fong Yan come out, Baldy hurriedly greeted him and reached out to hold Fong Yan's arm, but Fong Yan avoided it without leaving a trace. Baldy looked at Fong Yan, grinned and laughed, and said, Have you talked to Headmaster Zhong? Which class are you going to teach? But if I were Headmaster Zhong, I would definitely arrange a few more classes for you. You don't know, the class you taught before, 100% of the students were admitted to a famous school. If you stayed in the school, you would have been promoted for 3 years, and the bonus from that year would have been, oh, this school is yours. How can you reward yourself? I won't teach classes. Fong Yan said. You won't teach classes. You won't be a teacher. Baldy looked at Fong Yan in horror. Fong Yan, are you here to say goodbye to everyone? The last time you went back for the spring festival, you didn't come back for 3 years. If I let you go this time, I'm afraid you'll never come back to see us again, right? I'll be a security guard. Fong Yan said. He looked at Baldy's anxious face and felt a warm feeling in his heart. These friends really cared about him and hoped that he could stay in Rosefinch to teach. If it wasn't necessary, who would be willing to say goodbye so easily? From today onwards, I'll be one of your soldiers. Baldy also showed an expression of disbelief. His eyes were as big as Headmaster Jean Day's, but the difference was that Headmaster Jean Day was so angry that he smashed his cup. That was his favorite handmade cloisonné cup, and he usually treasured it very much. Fong Yen stood next to the bus stop at the school gate. He didn't have to wait too long before a black Mercedes-Benz slowly drove over. Fong Yen opened the door and got in. A familiar fragrance wafted into his nose. Lu Chaoga, who was wearing a silver suit, reached out and grabbed Fong Yan's hand. She didn't say anything and just looked at him with a joyful expression. The car stopped in front of a small courtyard in the villa area. The door was opened by a man in black from the outside. Lu Chaoga took Fong Yan's hand and got out of the car. She bent down to help Fong Yan take his slippers. After Fong Yan changed his shoes, she pulled Fong Yan to sit on the sofa in the living room. She put a cup of fragrant top-notch silver needles in front of Fong Yan and turned on the TV to the documentary channel. Then she quickly went upstairs while giggling. When Lu Chaoga came downstairs again, the exquisite suit on her body had disappeared. Of course, she changed into a set of white casual sportswear. She took tomatoes, cabbage, meat, and fresh fish from the freezer and began to busy herself in the kitchen. She made a tomato scrambled egg, a sour and spicy cabbage, a celery shredded pork, and a milky white fish soup with a few green onions floating on it. Lu Chaoga took Fong Yan to wash his hands and then put a bowl of fragrant rice in front of him. "Do you want a drink?" Lu Chaoga asked. "No," Fong Yan said. "Then let's eat," Lu Chaoga said. Fong Yan nodded, picked up the bowl and began to eat. Lu Chaoga kept helping Fong Yan to eat and said aloud, "Since our first product went on the market 2 years ago, the technology of the Rubik's Cube has been constantly developed and widely used in various fields. We borrowed the channels of the Lu and Lon families to quickly cover the market with our products. All the logos with flames are our products." The logo of Chaoyan Technology was 2 burning flames above and below, and all the products of Chaoyan Technology were stamped with the logo of a flame. Using a sentence used by Finance Magazine when reporting on Chaoyan Technology, it was, "This fire lit up the whole world, and created a company and a woman." The development of Chaoyan Technology is very rapid. We have set up branches in Yanjing, Mingzhou, Pengcheng, and Xiangtan. We have bought a new office building in Huaqing, but I still work in the same old place because the core research institute of Chaoyan is still there. Our market share is getting higher and higher, and the variety of products we produce is increasing. We have applied for nearly 100 related product patents, and there are countless products in our Chaoyan Underground Research Institute that are being tested or about to be launched on the market. Our products are not only for civilian use, but also for military products in cooperation with the military. Of course, this matter is still confidential. Some foreign companies want to cooperate with us, and some consortia want to buy our company's shares or want to cooperate with us. I refuse. We are not short of money now, we have a lot of money now. Every day when I go to the office to see the new financial statements, I find that the money in the company's account has increased again. Sometimes I don't have time to carefully check how many digits there are. Why? Fong Yan interrupted her and asked. What? Lu Chaoga held the chopsticks and looked at Fong Yan. When you were very young, your parents were no longer around. You were alone, living in the enemy's home, and your only relative was your aunt. She didn't spend too much time with you. You have it harder than me, so why do you sympathize with me? Lu Chaoga pondered for a long time and said softly, because I have long been used to those things. I'm afraid you won't be used to it. Chapter 443. She was used to the death of her parents. She was used to being helpless. She was used to being wronged. She was used to all kinds of misfortunes and disasters. However, she was worried that Fang Yan would not be used to it. When a person's fate was full of misfortunes and tribulations, when a person suffered too much pain and lost too much, her heart would become hard, and her body would become strong. She would shelter him from the wind and rain, and she would welcome the morning glow and bathe in the starlight for him. Just like the flowers on the cliff, they were more aloof and independent than the wildflowers and weeds at the foot of the mountain. Lu Chaoge was the flower on the cliff, and the former Fang Yan was the flower in the greenhouse. When the flower on the cliff saw the flower in the greenhouse, there would always be some worry, and also some pity. The wind was so strong outside, and the snow was so fierce. Could his thin and weak body withstand it? Lu Chaoge knew that Fang Yan was suffering unimaginable sorrow, just like what she had suffered when she was a child. However, she gritted her teeth and stubbornly endured it. It was a kind of tearing pain, as if she was awake to remove an organ from her body. "Father, which organ of the body should he correspond to? I'm worried that you won't be used to it." Hearing Lu Chaoge's answer, Fang Yan was stunned for a moment. He looked at Lu Chaoge's pretty face, which was full of concern, and said softly, "The place where I was born, there is a very bad habit. The men there all like to say heroic words like valuing friendship over life and death. For public and private reasons, they don't hesitate to pay with their lives. So, every year, there will be people leaving. Some people die in the strange and dangerous North Sea, and even their bones can't be retrieved. Some people die in the hot and boundless Gobi, and their bodies are submerged in quicksand, staying there forever. Some people die in battle, some people die of illness, and some people die in pursuit of martial arts. Sometimes they receive the news of the death of distant relatives on the morning of spring, sometimes they receive the phone call in the summer night, sometimes it's the double ninth festival, and sometimes it's the eve of the new year. You can choose the day of birth, but who can choose the day of death?" Fang Yan held the rice bowl and filled a bowl of fresh fish soup for himself, and then sipped it. "I thought I had seen through this kind of thing very easily. There are even times when I'm hot-headed and think that I can do what others can." Fang Yan laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "So I can't do it. I'm not brave, I'm a little cowardly." "You're not a coward." Lu Chaoge comforted him softly. "You're just too emotional." Fang Yan shook his head and said, "When I was alive, I didn't even have a good talk with him or drink with him once. What's the point of waiting for him after he's dead?" This kind of expression can't be called emotional, right? I'm just too guilty. When he was alive, I didn't take a good look at his paintings or appreciate his words. I knew he was busy with his art exhibition, but I didn't even go over to ask if it was going well or if he needed any help. He lived in his world, and I lived in mine. Although we were a family, I always felt that he didn't understand me, and I didn't understand him. So, this time, I stayed in Swallow Dock for 3 years. I looked through all of his previous paintings, and I didn't even miss the manuscripts under the bookshelves. I went through every word and poem he had written, even the mistakes he had made. Some of the words were very good, which proved that he was in a good mood at that time. Some of the words were very bad. At that time, he was probably very annoyed, right? Later, I discovered a secret. When he wrote beautiful words, there would be something that made him happy that day. For example, I received the title of Outstanding Graduate from school, or my martial arts improved to his satisfaction. On the day I felt the heart of Tai Chi for the first time, he drew a painting called A Young Man's Morning Practice. A young man was diligently practicing martial arts in the morning light. The sun in the painting was dyed red by him, which proved that he must have been very excited at that time. Fang Yan couldn't continue and lowered his head to drink the soup. As the warm and delicious fish soup entered his stomach, Fang Yan's depressed mood slightly relaxed. It's not that I'm not used to it, I just don't want to. Fang Yan smiled and said, I just don't want to. That's all. Lu Chaoge looked at Fang Yan, her beautiful eyes filled with deep worry. She said, Fang Yan, why did you come to Flower City? There are too many things to do, I can't keep waiting. Fang Yan replied, besides, my previous students, they are also waiting for me. Fang Yan, don't you think this is too risky? Lu Chaoge didn't believe Fang Yan's explanation. She said, I know you. I know what kind of man you are. You waited in Swallow Dock for 3 years, and you waited for 3 years. You thought that those people would appear again, you thought that they would attack you again, but they didn't appear, as if they had disappeared from this world. So, you left Swallow Dock, left Yanjing, and came to Flower City, the most dangerous place where your strength is the weakest. You want to use your life to lure the snake out of its hole. Fang Yan, this is too dangerous. Go back to Swallow Dock. That is the safest place. They're capable of anything. Fang Yan's eyes were filled with a terrifying red light, and the white of his eyes were mottled with red veins. He looked at Lu Chaoge and said calmly, but conflicts have to be resolved. They killed my father, so let me kill their entire family. You see, this isn't too much to ask, right? Fang Yan saw Lu Chaoge's surprised expression and asked, are you not used to it? I didn't speak like this before. If I encountered such a problem, I would use another way to say it. I would tell you that I'm a pacifist, and then secretly kill their entire family. This is my style, isn't it? Lu Chaoge nodded and said, indeed, that is your style. I hope that you are still the same as before. Back then, although you had a vicious mouth, your heart was very kind. You were willing to think for others. No, I can't do it. Fang Yan patted his chest and said, every night, it feels like I'm being burned by fire, tormenting me to the point that I can't sleep. Only when this fire is extinguished, can I return to my previous self. Then we'll take it slow. Don't be in a hurry, Lu Chaoge said. What are you going to do in Rosefinch? Are you still going to be a teacher? No. Fang Yan said, my current state of mind is not suitable to be a teacher. I'm afraid that I won't be able to control my emotions. Being a teacher is something you're good at. If you don't want to be a teacher, what do you want to be? Security. Lu Chaoge almost spat out the fish soup in her mouth. Security. Lu Chaoge almost spat out the fish soup in her mouth. If it weren't for the fact that she had to maintain her elegant demeanor, it would have been very difficult for her to control herself. A rising star in the education world of watching only wanted to be a security guard at a school. Isn't this contrast a bit too strong? I used to like to educate people, but now, I only want to protect people. Fang Yan looked at Lu Chaoge and said with an unprecedentedly serious tone. Later on, I realized that being alive is the most important thing. I hope that the people I care about won't come to any harm. Doing this is too tiring. It's tiring if I don't do this, Fang Yan said. I didn't do this before, that's why I'm so tired now. Lu Chaoge sighed softly and said, what can I help you with? Help me be Chao Yan, Fang Yan said. I'll need money in the future, a lot of money. I need resources, all kinds of resources. I don't just want a person to be strong, I need a family to be strong. Only then will I be able to confront those schemers hiding behind the scenes. Only then will I be able to chop off their dirty hands and pierce their dirty hearts. Lu Chaoge nodded and said, you were mourning in Swallow Dock for 3 years, and I didn't visit you for 3 years. I spent all my time and energy on the development of Chaoyan technology. I knew that this day would come, and I hope that when you come out, Chaoyan technology can be your strongest support. I think that Miss Qin also thinks so. After Fang Yixing's funeral, Qin Etienne immediately left. She became her mother's assistant and one of the decision-makers of the Qin family's business. Her eyes were always on Chaoyan technology, and she used the Qin family's resources and connections to protect Chaoyan's development. If it weren't for Qin support, if it weren't for the Qin family support, Chaoyan technology, which was as fragile as a baby and had infinite potential, would have long been torn into pieces and swallowed by those ambitious people. It could be said that if it weren't for Lu Chaoga standing in the light to attract the gunfire, if it weren't for Qin standing in the back to cast thunder, the two small flames of Chaoyan technology would have long been extinguished by others. "I owe you too much," Fang Yan said in a deep voice. He didn't say thank you, because that word was too weak to express his feelings at this moment. Lu Chaoga smiled silently and began to clean up the dishes. She said, "Go watch TV for a while, and live here with me from now on." Fang Yan felt restless. He felt that he was in a bad mood right now, and it wasn't appropriate to think about the matters between a man and a woman. Moreover, he and Lu Chaoga still lacked some emotional seasoning. He felt that he wasn't ready yet. If they slept together, it wouldn't be appropriate, right? Fang Yan was in a dilemma. He didn't know what reason he should use to refuse Lu Chaoga's invitation without hurting a woman's proud self-esteem. Because he hadn't spoken much in the past 3 years, he felt that his language skills had deteriorated seriously. "I've already cleaned up the room for you." Lu Chaoga walked into the kitchen with the bowls and chopsticks. Only then did Fang Yan realize that he was thinking too much. Chapter 444. You couldn't blame Fang Yan for overthinking it. Didn't this kind of plot appear in many novels and movies? When his parents were killed or his brothers died tragically, the male protagonist was in so much pain that he wanted to drown his sorrows in alcohol, while the female protagonist stayed by his side. When the male protagonist was drunk or pretended to be drunk, the two of them would ignite their passion and do everything that they could. Their bodies would feel so comfortable that they felt like they were on cloud 9. The next day, the female protagonist was the first to wake up. She looked at the male protagonist who was sleeping soundly next to her with a pitiful face. Thinking about his hard work last night, she got up to make a hearty breakfast and left. The male protagonist was at a loss when he woke up. Soon, he saw the steaming breakfast on the table and the note written in a beautiful handwriting. "I did it voluntarily. I don't blame you. You are the longest." Fighting. Fang Yan thought that Lu Chaoga was also such a woman, which scared him. But then he thought that Lu Chaoga was not such a woman, which made him angry again. Did she still have the spirit of dedication? Did she still have the spirit of loyalty? Lu Chaoga was indeed prepared. She arranged Fang Yan's room on the second floor next to her bedroom. They were separated by a wall, but it was two different worlds. Lu Chaoga took Fang Yan into the room and said, "You will live here in the future. It is safe and you can take care of each other. I know you like reading, so I put a bookshelf at the head of the bed. There are a few books that I chose for you. If you have any books that you want to read, you can also make a list for me. This is the washing area, and this is the shower area. The bathtub has a massage function. If you are tired, you can lie in it and rest for a while. The towel is in the cabinet and will be changed every day. You can throw it into the cage after you use it. Someone will come to wash it the next day." Lu Chaoga pushed open the wardrobe. It was full of clothes. "There are pajamas and formal attire for going out in here. I know you have the habit of doing morning exercises, so I specially prepared a few sets of training clothes for you. They are made of fine cotton and should be very comfortable. If there's a brand you like, you can tell me and I'll get someone to buy it for you." Lu Chaoga pulled Fang Yan out of the room's balcony and pointed to the open lawn in the backyard, saying, "You can practice there. There are high walls on 3 sides, so no one will disturb you." When he bought the house, he specially chose this house for safety reasons. Easy to defend and alert. Lu Chaoga had prepared everything he needed. Fong Yan looked at Lu Chaoge and praised, "You're getting better at taking care of people." Lu Chaoge chuckled and said, "After living alone for a long time, one has to learn some special skills. Let me know if you need anything. You must be tired today. Have a good rest." Lu Chaoge said goodbye to Fong Yan, then turned around and walked outside. When she went out, she didn't forget to close the door for Fong Yan. Fong Yan looked at the layout of the room and stood on the balcony to observe the surroundings for a while. Then he closed the curtains, filled the bathtub with water, took off his clothes and lay down. He didn't use the massage function of the bathtub. He soaked his whole body in the warm water, including his head. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, half an hour passed, and his head didn't come out. He didn't even expose his mouth to breathe fresh air. Except for a few bubbles on the surface of the water, there was no movement in the bathtub. It should be known that the human body couldn't breathe in water. Without fresh oxygen, it was difficult for the human body to live in water for a long time. Fong Yan actually stayed in the water for half an hour, which was difficult even for the most powerful turtle breathing technique. Unless the person was already dead. Phew, water splashed everywhere. Fong Yan suddenly sat up from the warm water. He raised his head to look at the time on the wall. This time, he stayed in the water for 36 minutes. Of course, Fong Yan didn't die. He entered the water in a stagnant state. He didn't need to breathe, and his lungs didn't need fresh oxygen. He used the Tai Chi heart to circulate his whole body, using the power of Tai Chi to maintain the operation of his body's organs, so that his body could fuse with the warm water. The bubbles that occasionally came out were the waste gas released by the Tai Chi heart, and he only needed the most primitive breath before he entered the bathtub to continue. It was like how a normal person needed a piece of bread for a meal. If they didn't eat for 7 days, they would starve to death. However, Fong Yan could only need 1/10 of a piece of bread for each meal. He could divide this piece of bread into 10 pieces to sustain his life. Using the same principle, he could hold the fresh air in his mouth and then divide it countless times, so that his body could maintain its vitality under the most extreme conditions. This was the existence of another ultimate state of the Tai Chi heart, fake death. Because Fong Yixing really died, he comprehended this fake death state during his 3 years of mourning. The Tai Chi heart was your sincerity. If your mood was happy, it would be happy too. Thy heart is sorrowful, and it is sorrowful. For a long time, Fong Yan's heart was like dead ashes. Lu Chaoge returned to her room and sat on the sofa in a daze for a while. Then, she opened the bathtub and began to fill it with water. She also poured a box of rose petals into the bathtub. She tied up her hair and wrapped it in a white shower cap. She took off her coat and removed the black bra that bound her chest. Then, 2 extremely plump snow-white jade rabbits jumped out. Lu Chaoge stood in front of the mirror. The 2 jade rabbits trembled and swayed in the mirror, as if they were unwilling to live on a woman's body for a long time and wanted to escape. She had a beautiful face and a pair of intelligent eyes. There was not a single blemish on her pink and white skin, not even a pimple that grew because of excessive heat. Her breasts were tall and straight, her waist was slender, and her round and slender thighs could instantly capture the eyes of any man. She used her hands to gently hold up the 2 fat rabbits. Only then did they lie down on her palms. Lu Chaoge looked at herself in the mirror and sighed softly. She reached out and tore off her purple lace underwear, then stepped into the bathtub with her long legs. She had just laid down in the bathtub and was about to enjoy the massage of the bathtub's lover's hands when the smartphone hanging by the side of the bathtub suddenly rang. Lu Chaoge didn't get up. She only called out, "Chao Yin," and the phone was automatically connected. "Boss, Dr. Lin Jibin from GS Studio encountered an accident. His car crashed into the railing on the Long Valley Bridge. His car was destroyed and he died. Lu Chaoga was silent for a long time, then said, I got it. After hanging up the phone, Lu Chaoga closed her eyes tiredly. Those people hadn't given up yet. This kind of thing often happened. If it weren't for the powerful human resources provided by the Qin family, as well as the famous school cooperation plan that Chao Yen carried out later, Chaoyan's Underground Research Institute would probably have no researchers available now. What was the most important thing for a high-tech research company? Talent. There was no doubt that their opponent was very good at killing, white shirt and black shoes, handsome face and starry eyes. Holding a cup of tea, he had a natural and unworldly aura. Fong Yen sat quietly in the security booth and drank tea. Baldy felt uncomfortable standing next to him. Seeing that the two subordinates beside him kept signaling him with their eyes, Baldy had to stand up and speak. He looked at Fong Yen with a flattering smile and said, Mr. Fong, let's discuss something. Why don't you take a walk around the campus? Go to the martial arts club to teach the students martial arts, go to the tea ceremony club to drink a cup of new tea made by the children, or you can go home and sleep for a while. There's nothing much here. Even if something happens, us brothers can help you. Is that okay? Fong Yen looked up at Baldy and said, You want to kick me out? No, no. Baldy waved his hand repeatedly. The few hairs on his head were almost scared off. How could we kick you out? We can't kick you out of anyone else. I'm just worried that you'll be tired. I'm not tired. Fong Yen said. Hee, as long as you're not tired. As long as you're not tired. Baldy giggled, but he was already crying in his heart. Who was Fong Yen? He was the man of Lu Chaoga, the director of Rosefinch Secondary School. With such a great god guarding the security booth, the colleagues in the security office all had difficulty breathing. In the past, when they were on duty, they talked and laughed, bragged, and smoked cigarettes. Their days were as carefree as immortals. With Fong Yen sitting like this, they didn't dare to talk, brag, smoke, and even laugh. It was only a bitter smile. As the new head of Rosefinch Secondary Security Office, Baldy had to think about his subordinates. If the subordinates' days were not happy, as the boss, he would also lose face, right? But why was it so hard to say this? Baldy waved his hand at his subordinates, who were observing the wind direction, indicating that he couldn't do it. He didn't have the ability or the courage to ask Fong Yen to leave. The old fox Xing Chang patted Baldy and whispered in Baldy's ear, You're our head, the highest official in our security office. Whether he's a prince or a prince, when he comes to our security office, he has to listen to you. Would he dare to not listen to what you tell him to do? Baldy thought about it and agreed. He was the head of the security office, how could he let Fong Yen suppress his brilliant power? So, Baldy straightened his back and walked in front of Fong Yen with a serious expression, saying, Fong Yen, go to the Sparrow River Tea House to rest. After thinking for a while, he added majestically, This is an order. Baldy felt that he had to stand up. If a tiger doesn't show its might, do you think I'm Hello Kitty? Chapter 445. There was a tea house called the Sparrow River Tea House by the river near the Sparrow Bridge. Some teachers who liked this style liked to drink a cup of tea and look at the river view when they didn't have class. Students with good family backgrounds also liked to come here to lament the passing of time. Maybe they would be inspired and come up with a good poem or essay. Fong Yen was stunned for a moment. He put down the teacup in his hand and said, There's no need to rest. I'll go to the back garden. Fong Yen walked out of the security booth and headed to the back garden of the school. That was the student dormitory area. Some naughty students would smoke, play cards, and even get into fights there. It had always been the focus of the security office. If boys or girls sneaked into the girls' dormitory, it would be an even bigger problem. This was something that the school would not allow. He really left. Baldy stared at Fong Yan's back. His face was full of shock and disbelief. He was just saying it. Why did Fong Yan really listen to him? Could it be that, as the leader, he was really a deterrent? He really left. Xing Chang also found this behavior hard to understand. Why didn't he get angry? Baldy kicked Xing Chang's butt and scolded, "Brat, are you waiting for him to get angry at me? If he yells at me, you guys won't have a good time either." He wouldn't dare. Xing Chang patted his chest to show his loyalty. "If he dares to get angry at you, I'll be the first to fight him." Phew, this feels good. You guys don't know that I was about to go crazy from holding back. Exactly. My smoking addiction is acting up. I want to find a place to smoke, but I don't even dare to. You're still thinking about smoking? I don't even dare to speak. He's sitting there with a teacup like he's my grandfather. I have to report to him when I go to the toilet. I'm afraid he'll think I'm slacking off and going somewhere to sleep, everyone complained to Baldy. Because Fong Yan was too imposing, it was really painful for them to be next to him. He took the initiative to patrol the back garden this year. What about tomorrow? What about the day after tomorrow? Xing Chang asked the crux of the problem. We can't send him to the back garden every day, can we? Exactly. If he doesn't leave, will we still have a good life in the future? Division Chief, why don't you talk to him and ask him to retract his divine ability? A pretty boy, why did he become a security guard instead of a good teacher? How good would it be to be a teacher? The salary is high, the benefits are good, and I can rest for 4 months a year. If it weren't for the fact that I don't have a diploma, I would also want to be a teacher. Baldy was also very worried about this problem. Others were afraid of Fong Yan, but he was also afraid of Fong Yan. However, he still comforted his subordinates and said, "You don't have to worry about this problem." What kind of person was he? How could he really be a security guard like us brothers for a lifetime? He was a dragon among men, a man that even Chairman Liu and Headmaster Zhong valued. Don't worry, he won't be able to work for long. Maybe he'll leave in a few days. Everyone felt that what Baldy said made sense. How could a young hero like Fong Yan be a security guard for the rest of his life? With this thought, everyone's mood immediately became happy. Baldy remembered how he looked in front of Fong Yan just now, and he was secretly happy. He waved his hand and said, "Brothers, after work, we'll have little sheep hot pot at the entrance, my treat." Long live the division chief. Everyone shouted. Rosefinch Secondary, Fong Yan used to be very familiar with this school. But now he felt a bit unfamiliar when he walked there. The previous basketball court had been heavily renovated, and the east and west courts were combined into one, turning it into a dedicated basketball area. The embroidered chairs on the football field had been removed and replaced with soft and elastic cement. The students sat directly on the concrete floor to watch the game, and no longer prepared chairs. Also, the previous club's activity venues were all scattered. For example, the literature club was in a lecture hall in the teaching building, the English corner was next to the fountain, and they played pure English movies. There was also the Taekwondo club and the tea ceremony club, which were relatively independent. Now the school specially allocated a piece of land to build a building named Rosefinch Building, which was used as a library and for various club activities. Every society had a fixed venue for their activities. Even the tree-lined path under Fong Yan's feet, which he had walked hundreds of times before, had changed. The short grass had grown taller, the railings on both sides had been strengthened, and the strong parasol tree seemed to have aged a bit. A lot of things could happen in 3 years. He had already spent 3 years reflecting, so Flower City would be a new beginning for him. Watching, this was the origin of everything, and also the origin of the tragedy. If he hadn't come to Watching, if he hadn't encountered those things, if he had just been a quiet teacher, if that was the case, wouldn't his father not have died in battle? A strong sense of guilt rushed over him like a tidal wave, surging violently. It almost overturned the dam of one's mind. Come, all of you. Fong Yan clenched his fist and said. His eyes were filled with blood, and it looked like a pair of black pupils were soaked in blood. His eyes were like a wolf's or a dog's, like a demon that crawled out of hell. Let's fight to the death again. Affected by his ruthlessness, the Taiji heart spun wildly, and the Taiji domain naturally unfolded. The Taiji heart released energy, sweeping up the withered leaves on the ground. Countless leaves were like countless butterflies, they flew up and down, gathering in the eye of the storm. Finally, they formed a ring, like a dragon of withered leaves that had a life of its own. The dragon of leaves flew around Fong Yan's body, baring its fangs and claws, as if it wanted to swallow the man in front of it in one bite. Huff! Fong Yan used the clear heart chant to forcefully suppress the ruthlessness in his heart. Bang! The dragon of leaves exploded, and the ground was smashed. The fallen leaves scattered in all directions, rustling in the wind. Fong Yan let out a long sigh of relief. The ruthlessness in his body was gathering more and more, becoming heavier and heavier. This wasn't a good sign. Even the pure and untainted Taiji heart began to feel uncontrollably collapsing when it was tainted by this. Fong Yan was very worried. He was worried that one day, the Taiji heart would no longer be under his control. In other words, the Taiji heart would only start spinning when he used violence or was in a ruthless mood. If that was the case, wouldn't he become a monster? Don't worry, Fong Yan said to himself. They will come. They will definitely come. He can feel their presence. Fong Yan seriously thought about it, and walked towards his original destination. In the depths of the flowering shrubs, a beautiful girl watched the scene unfold in front of her with wide eyes. She walked to the place where Fong Yan was standing, and looked at the withered leaves that had been blown into tiny pieces, her eyes full of doubt and curiosity. What kind of man is he? The girl muttered to herself. 3 years ago, Fong Yan was an influential figure in Rosefinch Secondary. 3 years later, batch after batch of Rosefinch's students had left, and there were only a few students who knew him. It was currently the students' lunch break, and class would start in half an hour. The students weren't sleepy, and were gathered in groups of 3 to 5, chatting noisily. There were also some new students who had brought back their military training uniforms to try on. They would be participating in the new military training starting tomorrow. Fong Yan, who was wearing a white shirt, walked in the middle of the crowd, and naturally attracted the attention of countless students. Some people even pointed at him, feeling that he was a very strange person. A tall boy was handing out cigarettes to the students around him. When Fong Yan saw him, he walked over and said, "I don't object to you smoking, because I know I can't stop you from smoking. But, can you change to an empty place? You're standing at the door of the dormitory, it's very easy to cause a fire." The tall boy lit up the cigarette in his hand, put it in his mouth, and took a puff. He sneered and said, "Who are you? Who do you think you are?" Fong Yan smiled, and the cigarette in the tall boy's mouth was in Fong Yan's hand. The tall boy didn't see Fong Yan's movements clearly, and he didn't even notice that Fong Yan had made a move. But, how did the cigarette end up in Fong Yan's hand? The tall boy reached out to grab it. He had already set his eyes on Fong Yan's arm, but when his hand reached out, he missed. He tried again, but he missed again. Young people tended to be irritable. He was ashamed and annoyed, and he reached out to hit Fong Yan's chest. Fong Yan's palm pulled back, and the fist that the tall boy reached out was hit back. His arm hung down, and his palm kept shaking. With a light touch from Fong Yen, his fist became red and swollen. The tall boy didn't dare to move again. He just looked at Fong Yen with fear in his eyes, who was smiling gently. Fong Yan's 2 fingers rubbed gently, and the burning cigarette was extinguished. He flicked his finger, and the cigarette butt flew into the trash can not far away. Ignoring the boys who looked at him in surprise, Fong Yen said with a smile, "This is the first time." "What about next time?" a boy asked recklessly. "There is no next time," Fong Yen said in a stern tone. Some people said that young people should be allowed to make mistakes. In the past, Fong Yen also thought so. However, some mistakes could only be made once in a lifetime. Just once, it was already painful to the bone. When Fong Yen was patrolling the backyard, Xing Chang from the security office ran over with sweat on his head. "Fong, Mr. Fong," Xing Chang shouted while panting, "those punks are here. They came to trouble Director Kai." Fong Yen frowned and said, "I'll go take a look." Fong Yen followed behind Xing Chang. When the 2 of them rushed back to the security booth at the school gate, they found a group of people making trouble at the gate. Baldy and another security guard on duty blocked the gate with their bodies, not letting these ferocious guys step into the school gate. Fong Yen looked at the crowd opposite and couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He actually found an acquaintance. Chapter 446. Brother Yellow Hair, it's not that I want to trouble you, it's the people from Rosefinch Secondary Security Office who are bullying us too much. The road is facing the sky, we each walk our own path. We weren't even in their way, we were just looking in from the school's entrance and they attacked us. Is there still any law? The man with the earring stood next to a man with a head full of blonde hair and said indignantly. After being bullied by Fong Yen yesterday, he had been thinking of getting back at them. As a gangster, he was most afraid of losing face. If he lost face, how could he lead his underlings? Therefore, he asked his big brother to help him take revenge. Brother Xiaoxing is right, they bullied Brother Xiaoxing like this, aren't they purposely making Brother Yellow Hair lose face? On this street, who dares to make Brother Yellow Hair lose face? On Rosefinch Avenue, Brother Yellow Hair is invincible. Brother Yellow Hair, there's a strange person over there. That guy is a bit strange, he seems to know some kung fu. Little Yellow Hair held a cigarette in his hand, proudly blowing out smoke bubbles one after another, and said with a blank expression, "Let's talk things out. How can we beat people up? This is a society with the law, beating people up is against the law. I want to see who dares to hurt people at the school gate. You all went to the hospital yesterday, right? Did you bring the report? We have no other intentions today, just to talk to them about the issue of apology and compensation. Yes, yes, yes." Brother Xiaoxing nodded repeatedly. "Let's make him kneel down and apologize, then the injured brothers will each pay 100,000, we can't be too greedy." There were a lot of punks today, there were about a dozen people gathered behind a blonde man. And they were not here to cause trouble, but to negotiate. They said that the security guards from Rosefinch Secondary Security Office injured a few good youths who passed by the school gate. One of them hurt his spine, and another had his nose broken. They even brought the hospital report, saying that if the school didn't give them an explanation, they would call the police and the media to report the school's violent behavior. The other party had the advantage in numbers, and they were reasonable, because the people were indeed injured by the security guards. At least for now. They came to Xing Shui angrily to denounce him. If he didn't handle it well and the matter was brought to Principal Zhong Dei, he was afraid that Principal Zhong would dismiss him, the newly appointed security captain. He was not a philanthropist who would show mercy just because he had a little relationship with Fong Yen. Zhong Dei was strict in his studies and did not care about personal relationships. He was famous for being an iron-fisted principal. Baldy and another security officer stood in front of the gangsters, refusing to budge an inch. Baldy's expression was cold. He forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "All of you, leave immediately. Otherwise, I'll call the police to arrest you. This is a school, a place to teach and educate people. If you rascals dare to disturb the student studies, it's not too much to put you in jail for a few years." The yellow-haired man threw the cigarette butt on the ground and stamped it out. Xiaoxing quickly took out a tissue from his pocket and squatted on the ground to pick up the cigarette butt and wrap it up. He knew Brother Yellowhair's temper. He didn't like people spitting and littering everywhere. He was a successful, high-quality man who cared a lot about the public environment. Xiaoxing put the tissue with the cigarette butt in his hand into the trash can next to him. Then, he returned to stand beside the yellow-haired man. The yellow-haired man looked at Baldy and smiled lightly. He said, "Of course, we know that the school is a place to teach and educate people. But what's the purpose of letting students learn knowledge? It's to let students understand that if you hit someone, you're being unreasonable. Now, we're here with the injured to ask you for an explanation. It's a matter of course. Even the law has to protect us. Which law says that ordinary people can't go to the school gate to ask for an explanation? You're quibbling. They were the ones who blocked the school gate to cause trouble. Did they hit anyone?" "No, I didn't." "Did they push you? Or did they attack you in some other way?" "They called me Baldy," Baldy said righteously. "They insulted me verbally." The yellow-haired man glanced at Baldy's bald head and said, "They said you're Baldy. This is indeed their fault. Just because they insulted you verbally, you attacked and injured them. Is this the logic of how you deal with things? Is this the outstanding result of Rosefinch Secondary's education?" Baldy's mouth opened, but he didn't know how to refute this question. He wanted to say that he didn't hit them, but now Fang Yen was his direct subordinate and an employee of their security office. He finally understood why Fang Yen didn't want to be a good teacher but came to the security office. He came to avoid trouble and let him be the scapegoat, right? "Brother Yellow Hair, they're here. It's that guy. It's the guy in the white robe who hurt us." A hooligan with acne on his face pointed to the distance and shouted excitedly. In the direction he pointed, Fang Yen followed Jing Chang and slowly walked over. Brother Xiaoxing's face was flushed, and he seemed to be in a state of extreme excitement and madness. The guy who beat him up, the bastard who tied him up with a tie and hung him on a tree trunk, this scumbag, devil, and cancer of society was about to receive his overdue justice. He would pay the punishment of losing his dignity and money. He deserved to die. Brother Xiaoxing felt that he had been invincible since he started his career. Didn't the hooligans or students of Vermilion Bird Street respectfully call him Brother Xiaoxing when they saw him? Yesterday was the lowest point of his life. It was the most shameful day of his life. Now, he was going to climb up from that low point. He wanted to revive the glory of the name Brother Xiaoxing, Brother Yellow Hair. It's the kid in the white robe. Today, you have to help us brothers and cripple that kid. Otherwise, we won't have the face to mingle in the underworld anymore. Look at that arrogant, despotic, and insufferably proud look on his face. Just looking at him makes people feel unhappy. Who does he think he is? He's just a security guard, but he's even more arrogant than Brother Yellow Hair. You mean him? Yellow Hair finally saw Fang Yan's face clearly. Although they haven't seen each other for 3 years, and his temperament had changed a lot, but wasn't this the Fang Yan that they wanted to bully but were bullied instead? Yes. It's him. Brother Xiaoxing sneered. I'll recognize him even if he turns into ashes. Paw! Yellow Hair punched Brother Xiaoxing's face. He was extremely ruthless. Brother Xiaoxing's mouth was cracked, and blood quickly dyed his chin red. A purple-red fist mark appeared on his white and tender face. Before Brother Xiaoxing could react, Yellow Hair kicked him in the stomach again. Brother Xiao Xing's body stepped back and fell to the ground. Brother Yellow Hair, a group of people looked at Yellow Hair dumbfoundedly. They didn't understand how things developed into this situation. The silly guy with a face full of acne opened his mouth and asked in a low voice, "Brother Yellow Hair, did you hit the wrong person? Didn't they come to the security office of Rosefinch Secondary to find trouble with the security guards who hit people? Why did the boss hit his own people now? It's him." Yellow Hair gritted his teeth and scolded. "These bastards, they're just pushing me into the fire pit." Yellow Hair trotted to Fong Yen, bowed to greet Fong Yen, and said with a smile, "Mr. Fong, long time no see. Do you remember me? I'm Yellow Hair, the one who had some misunderstandings with you before. Do you remember me?" Fong Yen looked at him in a trance and didn't answer his question. Of course, he knew this Yellow Hair. The incident with Brother Wolf behind him was one of the crises he encountered when he first entered Rosefinch 3 years ago. Because of the media's attention, he was almost hyped up as a perverted teacher who had an abnormal relationship with a female student. Although he quickly solved the matter with a thunderous method, he was still chased out of his rented house by his sister Lee, who was worried about her daughter's puppy love. After that, he moved into Lu Chaoga's Rosefinch house and fought with waves of evil forces. In the end, his father, Fong Yixing, died in battle at the entrance of Swallow Dock. It could be said that the Brother Wolf incident was a watershed in his life. At that time, he was high-spirited, laughing and scolding. Other than feeling that there was a woman who was very annoying, he felt that the sky was blue and the water was clear. Even Baldy's bald head looked ugly and cute. How depressed and heavy was his mood now. After not seeing each other for 3 years, he really missed his life at that time. Unfortunately, he couldn't go back. Seeing that Fong Yen didn't respond, Yellow Hair thought that Fong Yen didn't remember who he was. He introduced himself even more diligently and said, "At that time, my face was smeared with chicken blood and I even held up a banner at the school gate to denounce you. Oh yes, I wrote 'kill' and 'taste of life.' You were very angry and said that I wrote 'taste' wrong and added a side at the side. Do you remember now?" Fong Yen finally pulled himself out of his memories. Looking at Yellow Hair's expectant face, he nodded and said, "I remember you." Yellow Hair was so emotional that he was about to cry. With red eyes, he said, "After that incident, I realized that being uneducated is indeed a very shameful thing. After that, I self-studied the law course at the Radio and Television University. I am now a university graduate. Give me another 2 years and I will be able to get my lawyer's license. Mr. Fong, you are my first teacher and second parent." Chapter 447. Fong Yen looked at the excited yellow-haired man and asked with a smile, "Did you self-study the law course of TVU?" "Yes." The yellow-haired man nodded proudly. From a hooligan who had tasted blood for blood to a knowledgeable and cultured night school graduate, it could indeed be said to be a huge change of being reborn. "You can become a lawyer in 2 years." "Yes. I've been preparing for a long time. I'm confident that I can get a lawyer's license in 2 years." The yellow-haired man was even more proud. Fong Yan's eyes became sharp, as if he wanted to see through the yellow-haired man's internal organs and tear off his clothes and flesh. He said with a slightly sarcastic tone, "So, are you trying to tell me that you've become a knowledgeable and cultured hooligan?" The yellow-haired man's face turned red and he couldn't speak for a long time. 3 years ago, when I first saw you, you followed a bad guy to touch a girl's butt in a small bar. The second time I saw you, you were lying in front of the school gate with blood all over your face. This is the 3rd time we met, right? You came to the school gate with a group of you from 3 years ago. Of course, you're knowledgeable and cultured now, and you're studying law. Some of the laws are even clearer than I am. In this field, you can be my teacher. You won't say that you're hooligans who cause trouble and harass the girls in the school. You made them into victims. You're not here to block the school. You said you're here to negotiate and find justice. You used to hate the media, but now you know how to use the media. You used to be afraid of the police, but now you know how to use the police to protect you. You proudly told me that you self-studied the TVU course, and you said that you can get a lawyer's license in 2 years. You've indeed improved, and you've grown to a level that I'm impressed with. What do you want me to say to you? To encourage you to achieve anything if you have a will. To praise you for turning over a new leaf. Mr. Fong, I didn't mean that, the yellow-haired man was so ashamed that he couldn't speak. He really hoped that Fong Yen could see his growth, and he was also eager for Fong Yen to praise him. Even if she patted him on the shoulder, it gave him the strength to move forward. He had experienced too many things in the past few years. He had fought and injured people, eaten and dashed, went to the police station, patted his wife, and touched a little girl's butt. However, those past events were like a wonderful popcorn movie, burning in the treasure house of life. Not a single trace was left. That time, he became Brother Wolf's chosen puppet. His face was covered in blood as he lay on the stretcher. Fong Yen angrily pulled him up and used his finger to smear the blood on his face. Then, Fong Yen seriously added a side to the word taste. That scene replayed in his mind countless times, crashing into his soul again and again. The appearance of Fong Yen completely subverted his previous worldview. Before meeting Fong Yen, he thought that Brother Wolf's tattoo of a wolf's head was cool. He thought that his companion Zhang Quan Dan's lip stud was cool. He thought that Little Wolfhound's ability to drink 12 bottles of beer in one breath was cool. He thought that Little Pretty Boy's ability to rely on his Lu Dehua appearance to be taken care of by all kinds of rich women was cool. Of course, until now, he still thought that Little Pretty Boy was cool. He was born with skills that made people envious. However, after getting to know Fong Yen, he felt that Fong Yen was cool when he grabbed the glass bottle in his hand and broke it piece by piece. He was cool when he rushed up and lifted Brother Wolf's body. He was cool when he faced the gangsters and the media. He was cool when he used his finger to smear the blood on his face. Most importantly, he did not have Lu Dehua's face, but many young and beautiful girls liked him. It was as if a candle had suddenly appeared in a dark room, and Fong Yen was the one who had brought the candle to her. He felt that he should change and become a knowledgeable and charming man. So he began to study hard and became the most outstanding graduate of the TV University that year. He liked the law and began to strive for a lawyer's license. All of this stemmed from the influence of the man in front of him. He came to Rosefinch Secondary to look for Fong Yen several times, but he was disappointed every time. Today, he was surprised to meet him, but it was in such an awkward situation. Fong Yen looked at the yellow-haired man and said, "If you study hard day and night just to become a cultured hooligan, if you work hard to get a lawyer's license just to defend yourself and your companion's innocence, then I regret reminding you in the first place. I regret teaching you how to arm yourself with knowledge. It's better to let you taste blood. It's also less destructive to society." The yellow-haired man respectfully bowed to Fong Yen and said, "Mr. Fong, I know I was wrong. I relied on what I learned and became arrogant and complacent. I felt that I had a few drops of ink in my stomach, so I wanted to help my brothers to vent their anger. There was a problem with my mentality, and there was also a problem with my mind. I didn't use what I learned where it should be used. I'm sorry for your education." Fong Yan's expression softened a little, looked at the yellow-haired man and asked, "What's your name?" "My name is San Xian." The yellow-haired man said embarrassedly. He also felt that his name was really not presentable. "My surname is Hai. My parents used to sell seafood at the ferry, so they named me San Xian." "San Xian, don't feel ashamed of your name." Fong Yan patted him on the shoulder and said, "You should work hard to make your parents proud of your name." San Xian nodded and said, "My parents are already very proud of me. They didn't let me go home a few years ago, but now they call me several times a month and ask me to go home when I have time. They will be even prouder in the future." Fong Yan smiled and turned his eyes to Xiaoxing and the group of minions he brought with him. Where Fong Yan's gaze landed, everyone took a step back in unison. How could they dare to go against a man that even their boss had to bow down to? San Xian's face was extremely embarrassed. He took the initiative to explain to Fong Yan, "Mr. Fong, this matter is indeed our fault. It's up to you to punish or punish us. If it wasn't me you met today, but anyone else in the security office, what would you do?" "Seek justice," San Xian said frankly. "How do we seek justice?" "Ask them to apologize to the injured and pay for medical expenses. This is the standard method of our brothers in the underworld," San Xian said. "Otherwise, make the matter bigger. Most schools don't want negative news to be reported by the media. You guys are good at scheming." Fong Yan said with a smile, "I won't beat you or punish you. I'll let you remember this." "Mr. Fong, what do you mean?" San Xian had a bad feeling in his heart. He respected Fong Yan, but he was more afraid of Fong Yan. This fear came from the bottom of his heart. It was as if this man could turn into a monster by opening his mouth or waving his hand. Dang dang dang, the school bell rang. There was a brief silence, then the whole ground began to shake. The clamor, the sound of footsteps, and the students rushing out of the classrooms were like a flock of sheep spreading around the school before gathering at the school gate. When they passed by the school gate, they found a strange and eerie scene. More than 10 men lined up in 2 neat lines. They stood on both sides of the gate of Rosefinch Secondary as if they were greeting guests at the entrance of a restaurant. Some of these men had terrifying tattoos, some wore cheap and dense ear studs, and some had colorful, non-mainstream hairstyles. These men looked like delinquents at first glance, but they were doing something that did not match their image at all. "It's been hard on you, please go home safely." They bowed deeply to the students and shouted together. "It's been hard on you, please go home safely." They stood up and performed the same etiquette to the next group of students. It was the peak time for students to enter and leave the school. Just as they raised their bodies, they had to lower their heads again to remind the students who passed by them to go home safely. "Oh my God, isn't that the ear stud guy Xiaoxing? He's amazing, I heard he has a lot of underlings. Ah, that big fatso, he asked me for 100 yuan and hasn't returned it to me yet. What's his name again?" "The one with a scorpion tattoo on his neck is Brother Scorpion. I heard he's a famous gangster in this area. No one dares to mess with him." At that time, the owner of the students' cafeteria quarreled with him and he brought his men to smash the restaurant. The students were stunned by this scene. These hooligans were people they could not afford to provoke in the past. Now, they were bowing respectfully to them and asking them to go home safely, in a considerate manner. Did the big bad wolf eat grass now? Many students took out their phones from their pockets in surprise to record this strange scene. It was rare to see such a lively scene. Fong Yan sat in the security booth and drank tea. Baldy and the others stood at the door with their heads held high. They stared at the gangsters with majestic and disdainful eyes. They tried very hard to express to the students that the reason why these gangsters were so docile and did such unreasonable things was because they were conquered by our domineering aura. Baldy's face was full of pride and glory. The few strands of hair on his head were fluttering in the autumn wind. Very silly and very unruly. Chapter 448. Director, how do you feel? Xing Chang approached Baldy and asked in a low voice. "I'm all right," Baldy said with a dignified face, looking like a leader. if they didn't have some ability, how could they enter our Rosefinch secondary security office? Do you think anyone can enter our security office? It's high. As high as a 9-story building, Xing Chang said with a smile. Those hoodlums care about their reputation the most. They come to our school all day to show off, don't they want people to think they're powerful? Today, they did something like this and lost so much face. Let's see if they still have the face to wander on this street in the future. I'm afraid they'll hide far away when they see our school students. Evil never triumphs over good. Even if Fang Yan didn't do this, I would still find a chance to teach them a lesson, Baldy said righteously. The Baldy said with a righteous air, after this incident, if they know their mistakes and can correct themselves, it can be considered a virtuous deed. Although Mr. Fang isn't a teacher now, he's still doing the work of educating people. San Xian stood next to Fang Yan and asked in a low voice, Mr. Fang, I want to ask you a favor, what is it? Fang Yan asked without turning his head. He was focused on drinking tea, drinking the big leaf tea that Baldy gave him. The tea was slightly astringent, just like his current mood. Can you be my teacher? If there's anything I don't understand, can you give me some pointers? San Xian asked nervously. He was very nervous. Sure, Fang Yan said. San Xian didn't expect Fang Yan to agree so easily. After a while, he said excitedly, Mr. Fang, you'll be my teacher from now on. I'll definitely work hard and won't let you down. You're not learning for me, you're learning for yourself, Fang Yan said. You'll be a hoodlum for the rest of your life, it has nothing to do with me, but I'm still looking forward to you becoming more outstanding and using your knowledge in more important places. Got it, San Xian said, feeling enlightened. Fang Yan pointed to the hooligans who were standing at the school gate pretending to welcome guests and said, take them home. Don't come to the school gate to make a fool of yourself again. This is a school, a place for students to learn. If I see them causing trouble here again, I'll hang them on a tree and make them shout these 2 lines at the students. I won't. They won't come again. I won't dare to come again, San Xian promised before leaving with his men. Dong dong dong, someone gently knocked on the window of the security booth. Fang Yan raised his head and looked over. The beautiful girl that he had once met was standing at the window and looking at him with a smile. What's the matter? Fang Yan asked curiously. Are you the school's security guard? The girl asked in a crisp voice. Fang Yan nodded and said, yes. The girl looked at Fang Yan up and down, then pointed at the green security uniform on Baldy and said, then why aren't you wearing a security uniform? You're lying, the girl pretended to be angry and said, how can you be a security guard? You don't look like one at all. How can a security guard look like you? I'm a security guard, Fang Yan explained. They're all standing outside, and only you're sitting in the security booth. You're the security captain. Also, you still haven't answered my question. If you're a security guard, why aren't you wearing a security uniform? Fang Yan was troubled for a while, then said in a small voice, the security uniform is too ugly. Ha ha ha, the girl laughed. I also don't think it looks good. Oh yeah, are you off work? I'll treat you to dinner, okay? Why would you treat me to dinner? Because I like you, the girl said. No need, Fang Yan refused. I already have a date. You really don't give me any face. I don't treat people so easily, the girl said coldly. What's your name? I'm a security guard. Do you know what my name is? I don't know. I clearly told you, the girl said angrily, my name is Su Chi. Do you remember it this time? I'll try my best, Fang Yan said with a serious face. He knew that this girl had a faint affection or a slight curiosity toward him, but he could only push her away. Because he couldn't accommodate too many people around him. I'm a security guard. I'll try my best to remember the name of every student in the school. If I forget, please forgive me. There are too many people, and my memory isn't very good. So boring. The girl turned her head and proudly left. When most of the students had left, Baldy walked in front of Fong Yen and said, "Mr. Fong, it's time to get off work. Why aren't you going back to dinner? I'm treating my colleagues to hot pot. Do you want to join us? We haven't seen each other for a few years, let's have a drink." After a pause, he added, "You can call me director at work, but after work, we'll call each other brothers. I'm a few years older than you, so I'll be your big brother. There's no need to be so distant between brothers." Fong Yan raised his wrist and looked at his watch. He knew that Lu Chaoge might have already sent a car to pick him up, so he put down the teacup in his hand and said, "You guys eat, I won't be going. I'll go back now." Fong Yan and the other two colleagues nodded and walked toward the bus stop not far from the school gate. He had an appointment with Lu Xiaoge. Every day after work, a car would stop there to pick him up. Fong Yan walked to the bus stop, and there was indeed a large GMC limousine parked there. Before Fong Yan could walk over, a man in black pushed open the car door and jumped out. "Mr. Fong, we meet again." The man in black took the initiative to greet Fong Yan. "Qining." Fong Yan shook hands with the man in black. "Long time no see." "Mr. Fong, Miss Lu sent me to pick you up." Qining invited Fong Yan to get in the car. Fong Yan got in the car, and Qining followed closely behind. The car was spacious, and the view was excellent. Each seat was an independent airline seat, made of vanilla superior leather, and had excellent support and comfort. At the same time, it also had electric massage heating and 360-degree rotation functions. "Do you want a drink?" Qining opened the wine cabinet in front of him, which was filled with all kinds of expensive drinks. There were a few round grooves on the wine cabinet, and 2 rows of crystal-clear, slender, round wine glasses were inverted. "No need. Thank you," Fong Yan said. "What do you want to see?" Qining asked again. The ceiling was installed with a voice-activated TV, which could watch TV programs from more than 100 countries around the world. "I want to rest for a while," Fong Yan said. "Okay. Then I won't disturb you." Qining finally shut up. Like the early spring awakening, urging my heart, can't wait any longer. Empty infatuation, moving people's hearts. Happy times, it won't be biased. Blissful time, it will not be partial, will be divided into 2 hearts. The independent headphone system and the car's powerful surround sound system played an old Cantonese song by a Hong Kong and Taiwanese actress. The voice was magnetic, and the singing was affectionate, making people feel faintly sad. Fong Yan looked at the scenery outside the window, thinking how beautiful it would be if time could be turned back. "Where's Chaoge?" Fong Yan asked. "Miss Lu is in the office, she still has a report to do." Qining answered. "She said she'll rush back to have dinner with you." Fong Yan stopped talking, and his eyes once again looked at the towering buildings outside the window, and the withered old tree branches on both sides of the road. The autumn wind was cool, and the city was full of killing intent. Lu Chaoge wasn't having a meeting in the office, but in a bustling supermarket. She was wearing a black professional suit tailored for her by the world's top clothing brand, Angel. On her hand was a limited edition Queen's watch produced only 99 pieces by Patek Philippe. This watch was popular all over the world because it was worn by the Queen of England. The Hermès scarf around her neck was intellectual and exquisite, and her high heels were black and shiny, spotless. Such an elegant and beautiful woman stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. She didn't fit in with the aunties around her who were carrying baskets or pushing shopping carts. Many people looked at her with eyes full of doubt or hostility, and some people even said that she was a mistress who came to buy groceries to please her sugar daddy, and so on. Her assistant quietly pushed the shopping cart behind her. In front of them, on the left, and on the right, there was an inconspicuous man forming an iron triangle that surrounded her in the middle, so that they could get close to her in the shortest time possible in the event of an accident. Lu Chaoge didn't care about her surroundings, and she didn't care about the gossip floating in her ears. The sad experience when she was young had long made her heart as strong as the toughest diamond. She held a small piece of paper in her hand, and was carefully studying the scribbled words on it. Scrambled eggs with tomatoes. He doesn't like to eat too sweet food, but scrambled eggs with tomatoes is an exception. Broccoli gravy soup. He drank 2 bowls yesterday, and there's no broccoli at home, so we need to replenish some stock. And fish. He ate some of every kind of fish, so which kind of fish does he like? Then let's just buy some of each kind. Lu Chaoge kept stuffing the shopping cart with the fresh ingredients she had bought, and the shopping cart was already piled up like a small mountain. Baby vegetables. He likes to eat baby vegetables. Buy more vegetables. Lu Chaoge's face was full of seriousness, as if she was doing the most important thing in the world. What she didn't know was that when she bent over to take the vegetables, her full breasts, plump buttocks, and sexy waist that curved like a half-moon exuded a fatal attraction. Women who buy groceries are the most beautiful. Chapter 449. Lu Chaoge didn't go home, so Fang Yan didn't have anyone to talk to. He sat downstairs and drank a cup of green tea, then returned to his room to fill the bathtub with water, and buried his body in the pool. As soon as he entered the state of suspended animation, the voice-activated phone installed next to the bathtub rang. Wow! Fang Yan got out of the pool, picked up the phone, and asked, "Who is it?" "Mr. Fang, there's a guest." The voice of the nanny, Aunt Lu, came over. "Do you want to invite him in?" Fang Yan looked stunned, and the big drops of water on his hair slid down his cheeks. "Since when did I become half the owner of this villa? When Lu Chaoge wasn't here, did I have the right to receive or expel the guest?" Fang Yan was very nervous. He seriously replayed the interaction with Lu Chaoge in his mind again and again. He drank 3 cups of tea, ate 2 meals, and said dozens of words. These shouldn't cause her to get pregnant, or make her mistakenly think that he was pregnant, right? Thinking that he was innocent, Fang Yan couldn't drive away the guest who came to visit. Because, if his relationship with Lu Chaoge wasn't so close, he had to respect her more, and also respect her friends. If Lu Chaoge had become his woman, he could drive away all the guys he didn't like or who were too handsome. Of course, this kind of bullying behavior, which thought that he was nobler than women and loved and protected women, might be scolded as the sand pig doctrine. If there was such a day, Fang Yan didn't mind being a pig. "Invite the guest in for tea," Fang Yan said. "Okay, Mr. Fang." The nanny quickly agreed. After hanging up the phone, Fang Yan got up and took a cold shower. He wiped his hair and body clean, changed into the white satin clothes that he usually practiced martial arts, and went downstairs. Because he had just taken a shower, his face was ruddy, and he was in high spirits. Dressed in a white shirt and black shoes, he had an outstanding temperament. When he walked down the stairs, he gave off the feeling of a graceful and beautiful young man. "Long time no see. Mr. Fang is still as elegant as ever." The guest put down the teacup in his hand and praised. The man was handsome and had a calm demeanor. There was a faint smile on his face that made people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. His eyes were gentle and deep, making people feel that he was a kind person, but also a scheming person. It was rare to see a scheming and kind person receive such an evaluation. His white shirt was lined with a checkered waistcoat, and his tailored blue suit made him look both businesslike and fashionable. On his wrist was an exquisite watch with a brown crocodile leather belt. Fong Yen couldn't recognize the brand of the watch, but he really liked it. One of the 4 young masters of Flower City, Jiang Zhulu. Fong Yen had been silent for 3 years and had also disappeared for 3 years. His mentality and temperament had undergone earth-shattering changes, but his old friends were also growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Jiang Zhulu sitting in front of him might still have the name of the 4 young masters of watching, but Fong Yen could be sure that the Jiang Zhulu now was no longer the Jiang Zhulu of the past. While Fong Yen was sizing up Jiang Zhulu was also sizing up Fong Yen. The 2 men's gazes met in the air, and then they smiled knowingly. Fong Yen walked in front of Jiang Zhulu and said, "Eldest young master Jiang, you flatter me. Our Fong family is a small family, and we don't have any temperament or elegance. On the other hand, eldest young master Jiang is reserved and has an extraordinary temperament. One look and I can tell that you have the demeanor of a great family." Jiang Zhulu laughed heartily and said, "I can treat other people's praise as a cool breeze, and it's over after hearing it once. But if Mr. Fong is willing to praise me, then I will accept it. This isn't something that happens often." "Of course." Fong Yen nodded. "We're mortal enemies, after all. The fact that I'm willing to praise you like this proves that you're a worthy opponent." Jiang Zhulu smiled wryly and said, "To borrow a phrase from Mr. Fong, the Jiang family is a small family, mortal enemies are too heavy a burden for us to bear." Fong Yen sat down on the sofa across from Jiang Zhulu, and Aunt Lu brought him a cup of hot tea. Miss Lu said that Fong Yen liked green tea, so she had prepared the best white tea before he came. It cost 10 or 20,000 taels of gold. Only after Aunt Lu left did Fong Yen turn to Jiang Zhulu and ask, "You're not here to see me, are you?" "I am," Jiang Zhulu said with a smile. He took out 2 elegant but fragrant invitation cards from his pocket, got up, and handed them to Fong Yen. He said, "I wanted to invite Chaogo alone and pretend that she didn't know you were back and watching, but I think that's a little petty, as if you still can't let go of what happened back then. It's been so long, you've won against Lu Chaoga, and I have another woman, let bygones be bygones. If you don't mind, why don't we go to the wedding?" Fong Yen took the invitation card, which said that Mr. Jiang Zhulu and Miss Jiang Shangxin had tied the knot. Jiang Zhulu was going to marry a woman from the Jiang family. The Jiang family and the Jiang family were connected through marriage after all. Could it be that the Jiang family had been very satisfied with the Jiang family's performance over the past few years, or that Jiang Shangxin was very happy with Jiang Zhulu's performance? "Congratulations," Fong Yen said in a low voice. "If I have time, I'll be there to congratulate you personally." Women who bought groceries weren't necessarily the most beautiful, which meant that men were lying to you. However, beautiful women who bought groceries were simply so sexy that it made people feel hopeless. They stretched out their fair and slender hands that were smeared with various kinds of nail polish and picked out a bundle of vegetables or a few eggplants from the shelves. Then, they frowned slightly and pursed their red lips. The question of whether to choose 2 cucumbers or a box of bitter gourd made them hesitate for a long time. Lu Chaoga didn't have a desire to buy groceries. Most of her items, including her clothes and shoes, were custom-made by her assistant at home when she was slightly free from work. Once the custom-made items were completed, they would be sent over in batches. However, she felt that buying groceries was a very important matter. She had to personally go to the supermarket to pick out the freshest meat and vegetables that were most suited to his taste. Then, she would go home and cook them personally. She would complete all the processes by herself. This way, her happiness would be doubled. Lu Chaoga felt very happy now. This was because she finally had something else to do after work. It wasn't just work, it wasn't just reading books, it wasn't just watching boring television dramas or pretending to have orgasms. She didn't have to deal with complicated interpersonal relationships or think about those troublesome conspiracies and plots. She could be like other women, go to the market to buy a big basket of good vegetables and then go home to cook soup with her bare hands. The most important thing was that there was a man at home for whom she was willing to cook soup. After Lu Chaoga chose several kinds of delicious and precious fish, her assistant, Enjing, had to remind her, "Boss, the cart can't fit anymore. Should we get them to bring another cart over? Can't fit anymore." Only then did Lu Chaoga retract her thoughts from the small piece of paper in her hand. She turned to look at the shopping cart that was piled up like a mountain and said regretfully, "There are still a lot of things that I haven't bought. Boss, we'll just buy the items that you need the most. As for the other minor items, we can make a list and get the housekeeper to buy them, or I can buy them myself." And Jing looked at the mechanical watch on her wrist and said, "You've been out for 29 minutes. You're about to cross the crisis line. We have to escort you back." Lu Chaoga knew that what Jing said made sense. When had she ever had a comfortable day all these years? The Rubik's Cube was a Pandora's box that she had opened with her own hands, attracting batches and batches of demons and devils to surround and covet her. Time and time again, killing intent after killing intent, it was truly exhausting. Lu Chaoga nodded and said, "Then let's go back." Although she looked cold, she was a boss who was very willing to think for her subordinates. If there was a crisis, it would be the protectors around her who would be the first to rush out and fight with their lives. They were the most dangerous targets. A man in black pushed the shopping cart over to pay the bill. Lu Chaoga and Enjing walked toward the surface parking lot under the escort of two men in black. The underground parking lot was too dark and desolate. There were too few people and too many surveillance blind spots. It was easy for all kinds of accidents to happen. If the car was parked on the surface, with the huge flow of people in the shopping mall, it would not be easy for those peeping behind the scenes to do anything even if they wanted to. They also did not dare to brazenly expose themselves in front of the public. The engine of the custom-made bulletproof Mercedes-Benz was on. The driver in the driver's seat could start the car at any time to evacuate or drive the car anywhere to pick someone up. Sitting in the passenger seat was a middle-aged man who wore glasses and looked like a bookworm. His nickname was Bookworm. He constantly patrolled the area to prevent any suspicious people from approaching. A man in black opened the car door and Lu Chaoga bent down to get into the car. And Jing sat beside Lu Chaoga as the car door closed. The Mercedes-Benz slowly started up as another escort car followed behind it. The car drove out of the bustling shopping mall and onto the main road, heading for the flower district where Lu Chaoga's villa was. And Jing felt an itch on her head. She reached out and grabbed a black bug. "Why is there a fly here?" And Jing exclaimed. "Gotcha!" The fly's body suddenly exploded. White light blazed as it turned into a palm-sized saucer-shaped communication device. "This is a genetic bomb. Once it explodes, none of you will be left." A man's calm and powerful voice sounded from the communication device. He didn't remove his original voice and use a mechanical voice, proving that he didn't care if these people knew his true identity. "Then, congratulations. You've been kidnapped." Chapter 450. The development of technology had pushed the technology of crime forward. In the past, people had to slash with knives, stab with swords, strangle with ropes, and poison in drinks. There had to be something in contact with the human body. Right now, the criminals were thousands of miles away, and it was possible for them to carry out a large-scale massacre. All Jing did was grab a tiny black fly from her hair, but the fly instantly exploded, turning into a genetic bomb that could communicate and explode. It was even more powerful than Monkey Sun's 72 transformations. Lu Chaoge had been busy with the research of the Rubik's Cube in recent years, so it was impossible for her not to know the notoriety of the genetic bomb. And Jing was originally an outstanding graduate of a famous university. After interviewing for a job at Chaoyan Technology, she was placed in an important position by Lu Chaoge and promoted to a business assistant. Over the years, she had followed Lu Chaoge and seen too many conspiracies and hunts. She also had a deep understanding of the genetic bomb. As for the driver and the bookworm in the passenger seat, they were all carefully selected security personnel by the Qin family. Their understanding of the genetic bomb was deeper than anyone present. Hearing the man on the communicator say that it was a genetic bomb, everyone was extremely shocked but did not panic. The driver continued driving calmly, but a thin layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. The bookworm took off his glasses and wiped them with a silk handkerchief. When he put them back on, his eyes that looked casual earlier were now emitting a frightening and fierce light. There was an alarm system on his glasses. If there was a crisis in the car, he could send a message through the glasses in time. At the very least, the guard car following behind didn't know if anything had happened here for the time being. If they could receive the alarm, they could take timely action or report the kidnapping to a higher-level figure. Unfortunately, his attempt failed. The alarm could not be sent out, and the car they were in was shut down by the holographic screen. They had lost contact with the satellite in the sky. Everything was under the enemy's control. Bookworm, are you feeling very disappointed now? A man's pleasant but disgusting voice came from the communicator. The king of individual soldiers who wreaked havoc in South Africa, the legendary figure who single-handedly wiped out half of Chief Akamsi's army, after returning to Huaxia and being taken in as a servant by the Qin family, her days became more and more comfortable, and she became more and more careless. Don't you feel powerless and aggrieved that you can't do anything? Don't waste your time. The gadget in your hands is called King Kong. It has a shielding program installed in it that can block all signals and wavebands in the car. Don't try to dismantle it, because if you move, I will immediately detonate the bomb. Needless to say, the button to detonate the bomb was pressed under my thumb. As long as I use the slightest bit of force, or if I'm not careful, you'll be incinerated into thin air by that beautiful green liquid. Not only you, but also the car you're sitting in. Nothing will be left. After a pause, the man continued, "Oh, I almost forgot to tell you that your every move is under my watch. Allow me to introduce myself. I am a sovereign. Don't try to resist me, because I really like killing people." Bookworm sat quietly in the front row, not saying a word, not accepting the mockery and provocation of the sovereign. He was not surprised that those people knew his past information so clearly. With the expansion of the influence of the Rubik's Cube and the increasing importance of Lu Chaoge, he was sent to replace Qining as Lu Chaoge's security captain, directly responsible for Lu Chaoge's personal safety. In these 2 years, he had defeated countless snipers. In such a long confrontation, if they wanted to understand a person, they could even find out how many times he had peed on the bed when he was a child and how old he was when he was weaned. He had such an ability. "What do you want?" Lu Chaoge asked aloud. "The goddess. We want the goddess. We only want the goddess." The man said with a smile, "Miss Lu, don't get me wrong. The goddess we are talking about is not you, perhaps you don't know, but our organization has constructed a plan to capture the goddess. We will use any means and pay any price to get the goddess from your hands. Yes, the goddess is the Rubik's Cube. This does not mean that we deny Miss Lu's appearance. Miss Lu is a 1 in a million beauty, a rare goddess. Unfortunately, I don't like women. No matter how beautiful a woman is standing naked in front of me, I can't have the slightest interest. We are more interested in the Rubik's Cube goddess. As long as we have her, our children and grandchildren will not have to worry about food and clothing, and can even become the master of this world, Miss Lu, I don't think you will let us down, right? No. Lu Chaoga's voice was crisp. What a woman with character. If I were a man, I think I would fall in love with you, the man's voice came from the intercom. But, what are you going to do? Your life is in my hands now. As long as I use a little force, such a beautiful body will be blown to pieces. How regrettable is that? Even if I am not a man, I will feel sorry for those who are secretly fascinated by you. The Rubik's Cube Goddess, this is the code name they gave you. You must like it very much, right? Lu Chaoga was not interested in continuing to talk to the Lord God, but said to Bookworm in the front passenger seat, I leave this matter to you. Everyone should do what they are best at, and now they encountered the field that Bookworm was best at. What she had to do was to trust Bookworm and wait quietly. Do as they ask, Bookworm said. He took King Kong from Njing's hands. At least he had no way to get rid of this little thing. If he could, he really wanted to press down the window and throw it out. However, he knew it was impossible. This was because the moment he pressed the window, King Kong might have already exploded. Besides, who knew if those people had any tricks up their sleeves? The enemy could take risks, but he couldn't drag Lu Chaoga to take risks with him. He knew how important Lu Chaoga was to the Qin family now, and how much the elders of the Qin family valued her. If it wasn't for the talented Miss Qin supporting them, those proud figures of the Qin family would probably be suppressed by her. It was not a pleasant thing that the person in charge of the subsidiary company was too capable. No king would use a general who was difficult to control. Fortunately, at least for now, the two sides were still in the honeymoon period. How to get rid of King Kong in his hands was really a tricky problem. Since Miss Lu doesn't want to talk to me, then, Bookworm, let's communicate directly. Do as I say, and obey every word unconditionally. The voice of the Lord God became cold and determined. Lu Chaoga's attitude completely irritated him. The first thing you have to do is to get rid of the escort car behind you in a minute or something. I don't care what reason you use, but your every move is seen by me. If they do anything suspicious, I will put the dead on your head. Don't forget, I like to kill people, and I like to kill beautiful women even more. They exist in this world, it's really annoying. The Bookworm didn't waste this precious time and motioned the driver to turn the car to the fast lane on the innermost side of the main road. Slow down the speed, and then turn left quickly when the red light is about to shine. When the guard car behind wanted to follow, a large number of cars had already rushed over from the left and right sides, blocking them in place, making them unable to move. Beautiful. The Lord God praised. The second thing is to drive into the Seaview lane and go in the direction of the Seaview platform. Without the Bookworm's explanation, the driver had driven into the Seaview lane. The Seaview lane was the main lane to enter the seaport. There was a lot of traffic. A car squeezed in the middle would soon be surrounded by a long line of cars. The front and back were impenetrable, and it was difficult to escape. The guard team lost contact, and there was no external force to rely on. The car was trapped in the middle of the traffic, and the hope of self-help was slim. Now the situation was even more critical. The sweat on the driver's forehead was getting denser, and the blood in the Bookworm's eyes was getting stronger and stronger. His eyes were looking at the surrounding environment sharply, looking for possible opportunities to break through. And Jing was just like her name. She sat beside Lu Xiaoga as usual. She didn't speak or scream. She was no different from usual. But her right hand kept waving a button under the seat. It was the alarm device of the car's security system. Even if she knew that the chance of success was very small, but what if the headquarters received their message? Lu Xiaoga was very comfortable. First, she lay on the seat and listened to the light music in the car for a while. Finally, she was a little bored, and simply pulled out a fashion magazine from the back of the seat to read to kill time. She had fantasized about such a result countless times. She knew that there would be such a day after all. As long as the Rubik's Cube was in her hands, those people would not give up. She could escape a hunt, she could escape 10 traps, but could she escape 100 ambushes? Whether she was there or not, the Rubik's Cube must be there. Therefore, she simply refused the Lord God's request to take away the Rubik's Cube. There was no room for discussion or negotiation in this matter. She said that she would give a huge Chaoyan empire to Feng Yan. This was her promise to him. Who said that a woman could not promise a man? Chapter 451. Aren't you afraid? The Lord noticed Lu Chaoga's ease and asked doubtfully. Lu Chaoga's eyes are still on the gorgeous style of clothes in the magazine, thinking that she should order a batch of autumn clothes. Although she has enough clothes, it's best not to repeat them. Otherwise, men will be tired of looking at them. Hearing that the Lord is still asking questions, she answered perfunctorily and said, "Afraid. Aren't you afraid I'll kill you?" The Lord is very curious about women. The more you don't understand a woman, the more curious you are. Afraid? I don't see you afraid. Lu Chaoga finally looked up and said in a sarcastic voice, "I've prepared for the worst. Now that moment has not come. In the battlefield of feelings, there is no fairness, only who loves whom more." Lu Chaoga did not know what kind of feelings he had for Feng Yan. Was it familial love, adoration, attachment, or perhaps attachment? She has never thought about this topic. Because for her, it doesn't matter. She lost her parents when she was a child and was an orphan living in the enemy's home. Her heart has long been hard, and her blood has long been cold. Later, the miraculous appearance of her aunt gave her a clear understanding of her family. Where there are relatives, there is home. Although her aunt was burned to such a horrible appearance, she is also her most precious and only relative. It is for this reason that she knows that her aunt is doing something crazy and does not object to it. She understands her aunt and understands how desperate and crazy it is to live and die. However, her aunt, who loves her the most, is also dead. If no one in the world loves you, then find someone you love. Fortunately, there is Feng Yan. The man who was betrayed by her, the man who blocked the knife for her, the man who pulled her out of the mud again and again. If there is still light in the world, it is the place where Feng Yan is. If there is warmth in the world, it is when they watch the fireworks under the same sky. Lu Chaoga's life was complicated yet simple, pitiful yet happy. The 3 years of rapid development of the Rubik's Cube were also the most dangerous years for Lu Chaoga's personal safety. Countless conspiracies, countless traps, countless fire pits, countless assassinations, countless poisons and drinks, but she had survived them all. She did not complain, and no one would listen to her. She had never thought of retreating. She had nowhere to retreat to. She had escaped too many times. She was lucky. This time, she did not avoid it. That was her fate. Sometimes, luck and fate were just a step apart. The Lord was silent for a long time. When everyone thought that he had disappeared or was busy with other things, his voice came again. He sighed and said, "You are the most amazing woman I have ever seen. I don't want to say thank you." When faced with a hostage who had kidnapped you, even if he praised you as the most beautiful woman in the world, you wouldn't have any good impression of him. Lu Chaoga's eyes had turned to the magazine again, and she had lost interest in talking to the Lord God. She just couldn't understand, how could there be such a long-winded kidnapper? Didn't he understand that talking too much leads to mistakes? The more you talk, the easier it is to expose your own information and give the opponent a chance to take advantage of it. Mr. Bookworm, oh, perhaps it is more appropriate to call you Mr. Tiger. Now, I need you to do a very important thing. You don't mind self-dormancy, do you? The voice of the Lord was teasing. You know, your existence is a threat to us. We don't want to go to the devil's cave, you are still alive, and several young men can't get close. Thank you for your attention to me. The bookworm said coldly. He pressed the watch button on his wrist, and a thin needle popped out of the watch's steel hole. He pricked the acupuncture point on his neck with the thin needle, and his body immediately collapsed on the seat. Thank you for your cooperation. The Lord God said to the unconscious bookworm. Turn left at the first intersection ahead, there is a big truck parked on the roadside, drive your car along the iron plate into the truck. The Lord God's words were obviously directed at the driver. Because now only the driver can execute his order. Lu Chaoga did not speak, and the driver would not refute. He turned the steering wheel smoothly, and then drove their Mercedes-Benz through the iron plate into the truck compartment. Clang! The truck door closed automatically, and the compartment was as dark as night. The dashboard of the Mercedes-Benz flashed a faint green light, and the faces of several people in the car were as gloomy as ghosts. They felt that the truck began to move, driving to a distance that no one knew. Devil's Cave. What is that place? You don't hit a smiling face. Jiang Zhulu has been smiling, and his posture is very low, so that Fang Yan can't reach out and hit him in the face. Fang Yan doesn't like Jiang Zhulu, and he doesn't like his father Qiang Long Tan even more. Even quite disgusted. The father and son of the Jiang family are both hypocrites. Just because there is no evidence for something doesn't mean it didn't happen. When her aunt died, Lu Chaoga was heartbroken, and the courage to survive was to revenge. She wants to repay the pain the Jiang family gave her tenfold, 100-fold. After 3 years, Jiang Zhulu came to invite Fang Yan and Lu Chaoga to attend his wedding, pretending that nothing had happened. What kind of drama was he putting up? Hearing that Fang Yan is willing to make time to attend his wedding, Jiang Zhulu was very happy, and said with a smile, Mr. Fang, your name shook watching 3 years ago, and even after 3 years, there are still all kinds of legends about you in watching. If I can invite Mr. Fang to attend my wedding, it will definitely add a lot of color to the wedding banquet. When the time comes, I will definitely toast to you a few more times. Fang Yan shook his head, and said, I don't drink. I've already quit. Oh. Jiang Zhulio's smile gradually disappeared, and he said with a regretful expression, I've heard a little about your father, he is a true hero. The dead are long gone, and the living are like this. I'm sure uncle has another kind of fun in heaven, don't be too sad while you're alive. Fang Yan looked at Jiang Zhulu, and said, what kind of fun is there in heaven? Why don't I send you up there to take a look? Jiang Zhulio's expression was very awkward. Do you know how to talk? How can I continue this kind of conversation? The human world is fine, why do I have to go to heaven? If you want to go up there and accompany your father. I'm just joking, don't mind me, Fang Yan said with a smile. We're friends, why would I send you up there? I'll send anyone who sends my father up there, you didn't harm my father, did you? Why would I do such a thing? Jiang Zhulu said with a face full of anger. Don't harm your family. What grudge do I have with you, why would I do such a thing to your family? I also hope that Mr. Fang can find the real culprit and avenge your father. At that time, I will naturally accompany Mr. Fang and get drunk. Thank you, Fang Yan said. I don't drink. At that time, I'm sure Mr. Fang will be willing to drink to his heart's content. Jiang Zhulu was about to leave when Qining suddenly barged in through the door. His face was ashen, and it was obvious that something big had happened. What happened? Fang Yan had a bad feeling in his heart. Qining quickly walked in front of Fang Yan and said, I just received a call from the guard team. They lost contact with Miss Lu's car. When? 3 minutes ago. Tell me in detail, Fang Yan said coldly, suppressing the anger in his heart. I lied to you. Miss Lu didn't stay at the research institute for a meeting, but went to the mall with her assistant to buy groceries, Qining hurriedly explained, and reported the whole process of Lu Chaoga's disappearance to Fang Yan in detail. Miss Lu finished her shopping, and the convoy began to return. While waiting for the traffic light at the intersection of Huaqing, the car that Miss Lu was in suddenly turned left, and the guard team behind was blocked by other cars, unable to follow closely. After this sudden incident, the guard team immediately contacted the car that Miss Lu was in. However, Miss Lu's phone couldn't be connected, and Assistant N's phone couldn't be connected either. There were 7 other communication tools between the 2 cars, including satellite communication equipment and wave transmission equipment. All communication methods were blocked. While Qining was reporting the situation, Fang Yan had already opened the map on his phone and started to search for the area where Lu Chaoga went missing. His eyes were glued to the map, as if he wanted to drag Lu Chaoga out of the map. They suspect that Miss Lu was kidnapped, and are currently searching the area where the car went missing, Qining said. The guard team reported back the situation and awaited further instructions. Damn it! Fang Yan grabbed the teacup in front of him and threw it at the opposite side. Jiang Zhulu, who was holding the teacup and listening to the conversation between Fang Yan and Qining, couldn't dodge in time, and his forehead was hit by the flying teacup. Smack! The teacup smashed onto Jiang Zhulio's forehead, causing tea to splatter everywhere. A few tea leaves stuck to his face in an unsightly manner. The refined and elegant Huaqing's 4 young masters looked miserable and battered at this moment. Even a clay Buddha had some vitality, and Jiang Zhulio's ability to maintain his vitality was extremely good. However, when faced with the humiliation of having tea splattered on his face, it was hard for him to bear. Jiang Zhulu was furious. He jumped up from the sofa, wiped the tea off his face, and shouted at Fang Yan, "Are you crazy? What are you doing? I'm also very worried about Lu Chaoga's disappearance, but what does this have to do with me? What right do you have to throw a teacup at someone?" After flying into a rage, Fang Yan calmed down a little. He looked at Jiang Zhulu guiltily and said, "I'm sorry, I was too angry." Chapter 452. You're angry. Shouldn't I be? Can I hit someone just because I'm angry? Can I hit you just because I'm angry? Jiang Zhulu didn't believe Fang Yan's bullshit about hitting someone because he couldn't control his emotions. This guy didn't play by the rules, and he had been beaten up by him several times 3 years ago. Every little move he made had a deep meaning behind it, and he didn't realize it until the truth was revealed. Now, he was hitting him with a glass. What was he trying to do with Lu Chaoga's disappearance? Jiang Zhulio's hair stood on end, and a chill ran down his spine. His extreme wariness of Fang Yan made his anger disappear, and he calmed down as well. Fang Yan sat back down on the sofa and looked at Jiang Zhulu like a lone vulture. "I went back to Huaqing yesterday, and you came to give us an invitation today, and then Chaoga was kidnapped. Jiang Zhulu, how can I believe that you have nothing to do with this? It's a coincidence." "It's all a coincidence," Jiang Zhulu said firmly. Jiang Zhulu said firmly. He didn't want to have anything to do with the kidnappers. "I feel bad that something like this happened in Chaoga. Chaoga is your lover, and she's also my family. I can promise you that I have nothing to do with this. If I had decided to kidnap Lu Chaoga today, would I have come to give you an invitation and let you humiliate me like this? That's hard to say." Fang Yan stared at Jiang Zhulu as if there was a flower on his face. "You and your father conspired to kill Chaoga's parents, but didn't you pretend to adopt her for so many years? Fang Yan, don't slander me. You need evidence." What evidence do you have to prove that we killed Lu Chaoga's parents? What evidence do you have to prove that I was the mastermind behind Lu Chaoga's kidnapping? If you keep trying to frame me, I don't mind suing you for slander. You won't get a lawyer. Fang Yan said calmly, because you know very well in your heart that if you sue me because of this matter, it will only cause a big uproar. Moreover, it will confirm the fact that you are the murderers of Lu Chaoga's parents. You will only desperately want to disassociate yourself from this matter. Jiang Zhulu glared fiercely at Fang Yan and said, "So, you saw that it was difficult for us to defend ourselves, so you wanted to pour this basin of dirty water on us, father and son?" "I won't wrongly accuse a good person," Fang Yan said, "but I won't let any bad person go either. If you're the bad guy, we can only fight to the death." "It seems like we can never be friends," Jiang Zhulu said as he looked at Fang Yan. "I don't befriend people with evil intentions." "I hope you're right." Jiang Zhulu sneered. He walked in front of Fang Yan, picked up the 2 invitations on the coffee table, and turned to walk towards the door. Qi Ning's figure flashed and blocked in front of Jiang Zhulu. This was Lu Chaoga's house. When Lu Chaoga wasn't here, Fang Yan was the owner of this house. The owner didn't say anything, so how could he be allowed to leave as he pleased? Moreover, Fang Yan said that the kidnapping incident was related to Jiang Zhulu. Was it related or not? This matter had to be cleared up before he could leave. Jiang Zhulu looked at Fang Yan and sneered, saying, "What? You want to keep me here? If the owner wants to keep me here, then I'll really be an unwelcome guest and not leave." Fang Yan looked at Qi Ning and said, "Tomorrow is someone else's big day. How can we detain the groom? Let him go. We still have to go to his wedding tomorrow." Qi Ning was full of doubts, but still listened to the order and moved to the side. "Although I know you'll definitely refuse, I still have to say this, I'm also very worried about Lu Chaoga's disappearance. If there's a need, you can give me a call. My Jiang family also has some connections, so we'll definitely do our best to search for Lu Chaoga's whereabouts." Jiang Zhulio's voice was loud and clear as he said, "Lu Chaoga has misunderstood my Jiang family, but my Jiang family will always treat her as a family member." "Why should I refuse?" Fang Yan asked. "Go on, do your best to find her. When you find Lu Chaoga, I'll treat you to a drink." Jiang Zhulu took a deep look at Fang Yan and strode out of the villa. At the entrance of the villa's courtyard, a champagne-colored Bentley was parked. An old man in a well-ironed suit stood beside the car. When he saw Jiang Zhulu coming, he immediately opened the door of the KAI in a gentlemanly manner. Jiang Zhulu got into the back seat of the car, and the old man gently closed the door. After the old man sat down in the front passenger seat, the Bentley slowly drove out of the neighborhood. "Young master, you've been wronged," the old man said softly as he handed over a white and soft silk handkerchief. When Jiang Zhulu went in, he had an extraordinary bearing, but when he came out, he was extremely angry. It was obvious that the conversation inside wasn't very friendly. Jiang Zhulu took the silk handkerchief and wiped the water stains on his face and clothes. He said with a light smile, "Fang Yan is a mad dog. He bites anyone he sees, and he changes his attitude faster than flipping a page. He's just like that, and I've known him for a long time. He bears a grudge against you, young master," the old man said. "Hatred is like a seed. The longer it lasts, the higher it grows. In the end, it will become a towering tree." He never thought of becoming friends with young master, so his words and actions are unrestrained. This kind of person is the most taboo, because no one knows when he will turn hostile. And when he turns hostile, he won't show any mercy. "Let him be," Jiang Zhulu said. "However, there's a piece of news that we should pay attention to. Lu Chaoga has disappeared. It's very likely that she's been kidnapped." Young master, do you have a suspect? No country can do without 3 types of people. Those with guns, those with pens, and there's also an idiot. Jiang Zhulu glanced at the Lu family's small building that was gradually getting further away and said, I really want to know which idiot is helping the people get rid of a pest. You'll find out eventually, the old man comforted him. When the time comes, young master will treat him to a drink. Longtu Clubhouse. This was a luxurious business clubhouse that Longtu Group had invested nearly 1 billion to build. It was also named after Longtu Group and was one of the most private and high-end gathering places in Huaqing. Longtu Group was named after the names of its 2 founders, Qiang Long Tan and Lu Mingtu. Lu Mingtu died young, and the Tu in Longtu Group's name had been missing. However, Qiang Long Tan was extremely capable and turned the tide. He single-handedly propped up the company and led Longtu Group to carve out a big place in the new energy field. Of course, their good days ended 2 years ago. That was because another energy company had risen rapidly and lit up the entire sky like a comet. Chaoyan Technology, the energy technology company with the logo of 2 small red flames burning above and below, appeared out of nowhere. As soon as they appeared, they charged forward with an unstoppable, invincible stance, sweeping away everything in their way. They were not only a nightmare for Longtu Group, but also a nightmare for energy companies in Huaxia and even the entire world. Under the suppression of Chaoyan Technology, although Longtu Group was not as powerful as it used to be, it still used Qiang Long Tan's magical operating methods and a large amount of financial support to wantonly merge with Shou Group, firmly occupying the 2nd place in the energy field in Huaqing. The 1st and 2nd place were natural enemies. The 2 companies fought fiercely against each other repeatedly. The chairman of Longtu Group, Qiang Long Tan, had publicly announced through the media that if possible, he was very willing to expand the scope of cooperation with Chaoyan Technology. However, the strong female leader of Chaoyan Technology, Lu Chaoga, who was deified by countless media outlets, sharply rejected him. We can talk about acquisition, but not cooperation. Jiang Zhulu went to send invitations to Lu Chaoga and Fang Yan, inviting them to attend his wedding. This was also a show of goodwill. Lu Chaoga was pressing hard, and the Jiang family's days were not going to be easy. That woman was full of murderous intent. She was determined to take down Longtu Group. Unfortunately, it was unknown whether Lu Chaoga's luck was too bad, or whether Jiang Zhulu did not look at the almanac when he left the house. He and Fang Yan were chatting happily when news of Lu Chaoga's kidnapping came. This way, the Jiang father and son's goodwill intentions were thrown into a frozen lake. Sending invitations on the day Lu Chaoga was kidnapped, who would believe that you had nothing to do with this matter? Today, Longtu Club was not open to the outside world, because the son of Longtu Group's big boss, Jiang Zhulu, was going to hold his wedding here. The seats were full, and luxury cars were everywhere. As one of the 4 oldest families in Huaqing, they naturally had a deep foundation and a huge network of connections. High-ranking political officials, wealthy tycoons, celebrities, and celebrities all shone brightly, illuminating the night sky of Huaqing. Longtu Club was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and the largest hall, Phoenix Coming Morning Hall, was a sea of fresh flowers. Hundreds of thousands of fresh flowers formed a beautiful rural landscape. The closer they were to the front of the stage, the higher their status and seniority. Some of the young people who came to support were arranged slightly further back. For the wedding of Jiang Zhulu, one of the 4 young masters of Huaqing, other than Meiying Xue, who never appeared in public, Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu came to support. They sat together with a few influential young masters in the circle, chatting and laughing, so they did not feel bored. Lan Shanggu looked rough and straightforward, but it was easy for him to get along with those young masters. Ever since Lu Shu's face was disfigured, he had become a monster in Huaqing. He spoke in a strange way, and his methods were cruel and ruthless. He gave off a gloomy aura that kept people away. Lan Shanggu chatted and laughed with everyone for a while. Then, he tilted his body slightly and approached Lu Shu, who was drinking his tea in silence. He said, "If the Jiang family pushed Jiang Shangxin out as bait 3 years ago, then has Jiang Zhulu satisfied the Jiang family or Jiang Shangxin? How did this happen?" Chapter 453. You have a close relationship with the Jiang clan. Is there a story behind this? Lan Shanggu looked at the willow tree and asked curiously. The Lu clan and the Jiang clan were related by marriage. Lu Shu and Jiang Zhulu were cousins. However, because of the Rubik's Cube, the little goblin that was hard to control, the two clans often fought against each other. They knew that if they didn't expose the truth, they could still be relatives. Therefore, even though Lu Shu was disfigured and the Jiang clan suffered heavy losses during the Rubik's Cube fight, the two clans were still on good terms, as if nothing had happened. If the Lu family had given the whereabouts of the real Rubik's Cube to the Jiang family or directly used Lu Zhaoge's aunt to negotiate terms with the Jiang family, there wouldn't have been a life-and-death struggle between the two families. The reason why Lu Zhaoge and her aunt could persist until the end, besides the appearance of Fang Yan, was that they had taken advantage of the greed of the two beasts, the Jiang family and the Lu family. How could Lu Zhaoge and his aunt fight against a giant like the Lu family with only their strength? Without the Lu clan's support, aunt would have died long ago. Lu Zhaoge would have had no choice but to marry someone else. Of course, if it weren't for the Jiang family, the Lu family would have used all means possible to force Lu Zhaoge and her aunt to hand over the Rubik's Cube. Those two women were trying to walk a tightrope, and they actually succeeded in the end. In the end, the truth came out. The Lu clan knew they were tricked and the Jiang clan knew they were tricked. No matter how warm and natural their smiles were when they shook hands, how could there be no grudge between them? Lu Shu didn't like Jiang Zhulu. Outstanding people probably didn't like equally outstanding people. Hearing Lan Shanggu talking about the secret history of the wedding, the corner of his mouth curled up into a mocking smile. He sneered and said, "Jiang Zhulu can't deal with Fang Yan, but can't he handle a woman?" Lan Shanggu gave Lu Shu a thumbs up and said, "That's a fair comment." However, this woman was no ordinary woman. She was a woman from the Jiang family. Who in Huaqing didn't know about the relationship between the Jiang family and Fang Yan? Although we brothers weren't there, there were hundreds of people who witnessed the big drama that happened in Yanjing City. For a period of time, calluses grew in my ears. What Fang Yan forced Jiang Junling to abdicate, what Jiang Junling defeated the grassroots hero, and what they were fighting over a woman. What kind of rumors didn't I hear? You've heard a lot, haven't you? Lan Shanggu lowered his voice and whispered, "Jiang Zhulu has married a woman from the general family. Is he preparing to fight to the death with Fang Yan? What does the Jiang clan have to do with us?" Lan Shanggu smiled bitterly and said, "If it was in the past, we could drink red wine and watch the show. The more intense the fight, the better. But now, we can't do that. Both of us are partners of Chaoyan Technology and distributors of Chaoyan's products. Who does Chaoyan Technology belong to? On the surface, it seems to belong to Lu Zhaoge, but in reality, it belongs to the Qin family. But what is the relationship between Qin families Lu Zhaoge and Fang Yan? In the end, their surname is Fang. Previously, we expected that the new energy products from the Rubik's Cube would be popular, but no one expected it to be to this extent, right? Let's talk about the past 2 years. After the Lan and Lu family became the agents of Little Flame's products, how many percentage points did the family's annual profit increase? 300%, and that's only because we are the agents. Lu Zhaoge, that woman, has controlled our profits too tightly. The company sets the price and doesn't give us the right to set the price freely. Otherwise, how much profit could we achieve? Lan Shanggu's expression was both proud and helpless. He smiled bitterly and said, "At first, we only wanted to establish a relationship with the Rubik's Cube and earn some quick money for the family. Now, we have all become the puppets of the Rubik's Cube. We can go up but not down, we can charge but not retreat. After tasting the benefits of the Rubik's Cube, if I tell you to transfer the agent rights to someone else, will the Liu family agree? Will you fight with your life? Anyway, I won't do it." How many years has it been since Chao Yan was established? It has only been a little more than 3 years since its establishment, and it has already developed to this point. In the future, as the energy crisis becomes more and more serious, the power that the Rubik's Cube can display will become more and more powerful. That will be the real harvest season for us. It would be a pity to withdraw now. Lu Shu gently shook the goblet in his hand, his posture elegant and calm. If it was 3 years ago, his performance could make countless women fall head over heels for him. Back then, the Casanova of watching was a popular man among thousands of young girls and young women. Now that his face was disfigured, he had become repulsive. No one paid attention to him anymore. Some women who used to be close to him accidentally glanced at him and immediately showed a reserved smile. They picked up the goblet in front of them and made a gesture to invite him to drink. Before swallowing a mouthful of wine, they had already turned around, no longer with the seductive eyes that said, "I'm free tonight." Some women said that they liked his talent and inner qualities, but it was all nonsense. In the end, this was a world of face. You want to play with the Rubik's Cube, but the Rubik's Cube may not be willing to play with you. How did we sign the agency contract? Every 3 years. Now is the 2nd year. After next year, Xiao Yan wants to change agents. What can you and I do? Lu Shu said with a face full of disdain. Lan Shanggu laughed and said, "So, aren't I hugging Fang Yan's thigh? If he is willing to help us, Lu Chaoga won't even say a no." You didn't see the look in Lu Chaoga's eyes when she mentioned Fang Yan. "Io, what's so good about that kid? Whether he's good or not, I don't know." Lu Shu slowly sipped the red wine in his glass, maintaining his unique pace, which seemed a little out of place with the surrounding environment. But he definitely won't be bad to Lu Chaoga. A woman will fall in love with a bad man, but she will never fall in love with a man who treats her badly. Hit the nail on the head. As expected of the Casanova. Lan Shanggu praised. Lu Shu's sharp eyes swept over, and there was an unsuppressible hostility in those eyes. Lan Shanggu knew he said the wrong thing, and didn't take it to heart. Right now, Lu Shu couldn't do anything to him, just like how he couldn't do anything to Lu Shu. They were 2 dogs, Chao Yan Technology's dogs, Lu Chaoga's dogs, or rather, Fang Yan's dogs. They found 3 agents to maintain a balanced development of the 3 legs of a tripod. They needed the Jiang family and the Lu family to fight and bite each other. This way, it would be easier for them to control, and it would be easier for them to make the market bigger and better. Of course, even if the Jiang family and the Lu family joined forces to fight with Chao Yan Technology for the right to speak, it wouldn't have any pressure on them. Because they still had the Qin family's huge sales system to help them sell. No matter what, the Qin family wouldn't stand on their side. Unless the Qin family wanted to become the biggest shareholder of Chao Yan, and join forces with the Jiang family and the Lu family to force Lu Chaoga to abdicate. Was that possible? Thinking about it, they were a bit expectant. However, Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu both knew that there was a 99% chance that this would happen. Why would the Qin family give up on Lu Chaoga, who was easy to control and suppress, and choose Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu, a huge family with a lot of resources? Everyone understood the logic of not being able to get rid of a big family. Don't joke with me, Lu Shu said with a gloomy voice. Because that would make me feel like a joke. Lan Shanggu patted Lu Shu's shoulder and said, Brother, you misunderstood me. It was just a slip of the tongue. I really wanted to praise you in my heart. Lu Shu looked at Lan Shanggu and said, although we really want to get the long-term agent of Chao Yen technology, our two families also need to maintain our dignity and independence. If we always put down our pride and bow, not only will they look down on us, even we will look down on ourselves. What do you mean? Close cooperation, Lu Shu said. Keep a distance. That makes sense. Lan Shanggu laughed and said, will Lu Chaoge and Fang Yan come to Jiang Zhuliu's wedding? It would be a slap in the face if he came, but it would be a slap in the face if he didn't come. The Jiang father and son are in a difficult position. Lu Shu lowered his head and drank his wine, not answering Lan Shanggu's question. Lan Shanggu felt bored and turned around to flirt with a young beauty beside him. On the tea stage surrounded by flowers, the lights shone brightly. In the warm and joyful wedding march, a couple walked out hand in hand. The applause below the stage was thunderous. Jiang Zhuliu was dressed in a black suit, looking very handsome. He covered Shangxin's face with a white veil, looking extremely beautiful. When this beautiful couple walked out, everyone felt that they were a perfect match. After the MC finished his speech, it was the newlyweds' parents' turn to speak on stage. Qiang Long Tan had a strong aura, but he only said the usual words of wishing his daughter a happy life after marriage. The representative of the Jiang family was Jiang Shangxin's mother, Li Yun. She was a charming young woman. Her daughter had already married someone else, but she seemed to have gone back in time and did not age. Even though we are holding a Chinese-style wedding today, I am a devout believer. I would like to use the Western wedding etiquette to ask this couple a question in front of all the guests and their relatives. Shangxin, are you willing to marry this man to become your husband? Love him, take care of him, respect him, accept him, and be faithful to him until the end of your life, regardless of sickness or health, or any other reason. Li Yun was very emotional. Tears welled up in her eyes when she thought about how she was about to marry her precious daughter off. I am willing, Jiang Shangxin replied in a sweet voice. Zhuliu, are you willing to marry this woman to be your wife? Love her, take care of her, respect her, accept her, and make her the happiest woman in the world, regardless of sickness or health, or any other reason. I am willing, Jiang Zhuliu replied in a determined voice. I am not willing. At the same time, a low voice sounded at the entrance of the banquet hall. Chapter 454. I don't want to. These 4 words were like a clap of thunder that pierced through everyone's ears. It was like a bolt of lightning that pierced through everyone's field of vision. At such a sacred and blissful moment, wasn't someone purposely causing trouble by shouting, I don't want to, in such an ear-piercing voice? There was an uproar, and everyone turned around to search for the source of the voice. It wasn't a child's careless words, nor was it a mischievous prank from a mischievous person. Someone was really opposing this marriage. Could it be Jiang Zhuliu's lover? Apart from such a relationship, who else would stand up to oppose someone else's marriage? However, the person who shouted was obviously a man. Or was Jiang Zhuliu a double? Or was this man here to disrupt the wedding because of Jiang Shangxin? Li Yun looked at her daughter worriedly. If things were really as she had guessed, this would be a huge scandal for the Jiang family. No matter how highly her father was regarded by the Jiang family, he would probably be severely punished. Jiang Shangxin felt her mother's worried gaze and shook her head slightly. She indicated that this matter wasn't what she had imagined. Li Yun was then relieved. As long as it wasn't a problem on her daughter's side, it would be a problem on the Jiang family side. If there was a problem on the Jiang family side, they would have an excuse to fly into a rage. It might even bring about some benefits for their family. The man stood at the entrance of the banquet hall. As the lights were shining, only a blurry shadow could be seen at the entrance. He walked over step by step, from the darkness to the light. His silhouette gradually became clearer, and it was completely presented to the guests. He had returned to the public eye after leaving for 3 years. Finally, someone remembered who he was. Ah, he is Fang Yan, the teacher from Rosefinch High School. He is back again. His martial arts skills are very good, and he even fought with the Japanese sword god. Do you remember? Didn't I say, why is he back again? Don't tell me. He and Jiang Zhulu. He wore a white shirt and cloth shoes, and his black hair was flying in the wind. His spine was straight, and he looked prouder than everyone else. He walked toward the podium step by step. His footsteps were light, and his body was agile. Many people discovered this strange situation. They realized that watching a man walk was a very pleasing thing to the eyes. Women were not the only ones who thought this way. Even men felt that he was walking a beautiful path. He walked in an imposing manner and was as elegant as an immortal. Fang Yan stood below the stage, his handsome face slightly raised. He looked at the newlyweds and their parents standing on the stage and said firmly, "I don't agree." He said again, "I don't agree." Jiang Zhulio's expression was extremely ugly as he forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart. He stared at Fang Yan and said, "Fang Yan, if you're here to bless and drink, I'll warmly welcome you. I'll definitely accompany you for a few drinks later. Let's not go home until we're drunk. If you're here to deliberately provoke and ruin my wedding, aren't you going too far?" There were hundreds of friends and relatives present, and they had just given me their most sincere blessings. Aren't you afraid of being condemned by thousands of people for insulting me like this? Jiang Zhulu lived up to his reputation as one of the 4 prodigies of watching. Even though he was on the verge of exploding, his words were clear and logical. He naturally placed himself on the weaker side, winning the sympathy of everyone present. Moreover, he said that hundreds of guests had come to give him their blessings, but only Fang Yan was here to provoke and ruin his wedding. With one sentence, he pushed Fang Yan to the opposite side of all the guests present. Qiang Long Tan had been through a lot, and the change in front of him could not shake his mind. He sighed softly and looked at Fang Yan and said, "You're so young, but why are you so vicious? With your actions, it's my Jiang family and my son Zhulu who will be insulted. But have you thought about it? Nearly 1,000 pairs of eyes are watching you. Your words and actions will definitely spread. When that happens, you'll be infamous. Who would dare to associate with you, Fang Yan? Who would be willing to be friends with you, Fang Yan? I know that because of what happened to Chaoga, you and Zhulu had some conflicts in the past. But now, you and Chaoga are living together, and Zhulu has a girl he likes. Now, he's going to hold her hand and walk down the aisle. Let bygones be bygones, and a smile will wipe away all enmity. It'll be a good story if it gets out. It's inevitable that young people are hot-blooded. We can understand and accept it. But you've done something like this on a day like this, that's already crossed the bottom line of what we can bear. Do you really have to push our Jiang family to the brink of destruction? Fang Yan, stop. Don't walk your own path into a dead end." Qiang Long Tan was even more shrewd and ruthless. He kept saying that he was doing this for the good of the young, but he kept putting one evil label after another on Fang Yan's head. Each of his words led the guests below the stage to think. Could a fellow like Fang Yan become a comrade who would fight and retreat together with him? Fang Yan already knew what kind of people the Jiang father and son were. Even a smart woman like Lu Chaoga had been deceived by them for so many years. Even if he wanted to bicker with them, he wouldn't have much of an advantage. His eyes were cold as he looked at Qiang Long Tan and Jiang Zhulu. He said in a low voice, "I didn't intend to ruin their wedding, even though I really don't like them. Whoosh, a clamor rose from the ground. Wasn't this guy being too straightforward? Even if he really thought that way, there was no need to say it out loud in front of others. Wasn't this a public slap in the face? But this kind of feeling was really refreshing. It could be seen from the ashen complexion of Jiang Longtan and Jiang Zhulu, as well as their twitching brows. Fang Yan held out his hand to Kang Longtan and said, "Give me Lu Chaoge, I'll turn around and leave." Lu Chaoge. What happened to Lu Chaoge? Why did Fang Yan want Kang Longtan to give him Lu Chaoge? Everyone present was a shrewd person. When they heard Fang Yan's words, their eyes flickered. They knew that there was an inside story to this matter. Fang Yan, I said that we didn't touch Lu Chaoge. The last time I saw Lu Chaoge was at a business conference a few months ago. I haven't seen Lu Chaoge since then. What does Lu Chaoge's disappearance have to do with the Jiang family? Jiang Zhulu shouted through gritted teeth. What happened to Lu Chaoge? Kang Longtan looked at Fang Yan worriedly. He asked anxiously, what happened to her? What happened to her? Lu Chaoge was kidnapped. Fang Yan said viciously, his eyes flashing with a murderous light. She was kidnapped by you. You're slandering me. Jiang Zhulu said angrily. You're slandering us. When did we touch Lu Chaoge? What evidence do you have to prove that we kidnapped Lu Chaoge? You don't have any, and you're slandering us in front of so many people. Just wait for the indictment. Kang Longtan threw a dirty look at his son, Jiang Zhulu, and said, Zhulu, now is not the time to deny responsibility. The innocent are innocent, and the guilty are innocent. Let's find Chaoge and listen to her story. The truth will be revealed. Hurry up and send our people out to look for Chaoge. Let's call our friends and ask them to help with the search, and all our good friends and relatives here, please help with the search as well. Help me find Chaoge, and I, Kang Longtan, will owe everyone here a big favor. Kang Longtan bowed deeply to the audience, as if he was worried about his father. Some people were moved by Kang Longtan's kindness and righteousness, and they took out their phones to make calls. For a moment, the crowd kept ringing. Leverage. This was what it meant to be a master of leverage. No matter how dangerous the situation was, no matter how big the crisis, they could always find a fulcrum and successfully leverage it to lead things in the direction they wanted. From now on, Kang Longtan's image would be magnified in many people's hearts. He would become a good father who would let bygones be bygones and be the first to save his daughter when she was in danger. Kang Longtan turned to Fang Yan and said, Fang Yan, tell us, what's going on with Chaoge? When did she go missing? Did you call the police? What did the police say? Who's in charge of the case? I'll call the person in charge. It'd be best if someone can come here and explain the situation. Kang Longtan had put aside his personal grudges and vendettas. All he wanted was to find his daughter, Lu Chaoge. How am I going to explain it to Mingtu and his wife if anything happens to her? Kang Longtan said with teary eyes. The old man was definitely an experienced actor. His acting skills were so good that he was able to get into character in no time. It had to be said that Fang Yan had made full preparations before coming here. However, after Jiang Longtan had created such a sensational drama, the rhythm had already been disrupted by him. The public opinion had already begun to spread in a direction that was not favorable to him. Once it exploded, it would be out of control. Kang Longtan, stop putting on this hypocritical show. Don't you feel disgusted? Even if you don't, we all feel disgusted. In order to annex Longtu Group, you killed Chaoge's parents. Chaoge and you are irreconcilable enemies. Fang Yan was trembling with anger. Later, you found out that the Rubik's Cube technology was still in Chaoge's hands. You sent people to kill her several times. Some time ago, Chowga received a secret report saying that you recruited killers from abroad to plan a kidnapping. But because Chow Yan Group has been developing rapidly in recent years and has been suppressing Lone2 Group, and because you still haven't given up on the Rubik's Cube technology, who didn't know how to act to gain sympathy? Who didn't know how to make up a story? Half of it was true and half of it was false. Let the audience speculate on their own. Whether it was Qiang Longtan, Jiang Zhulu, or Fang Yan, a group of talented actors gathered together to show off their acting skills. Each of them had a chance to win an Oscar. Chapter 455. History was written by the victors, and the truth was made up by the victors. No one knew the truth, except for the person who knew the truth. Fang Yan resorted to all means possible to smear the Jiang family's father and son. He blended what he knew and then poured it all on the Jiang family's father and son. Jiang Zhulio's counterattack was to show weakness and attack Fang Yan's character from the standpoint of the weak to win everyone's sympathy. Qiang Longtan's response was selflessness and love. He made himself into a great father who could bear any humiliation and grievances for the safety of his children. He didn't speak the truth, didn't present evidence, and didn't respond to Fang Yan's attack. However, this was the best way to respond. Each of them used their unique skills, and the hundreds of guests were dazzled and couldn't tell the truth from the lies. It was easy for humans to believe in what they saw and what they heard. However, what they saw and what they heard must be true. Now that Fang Yan jumped out and angrily accused the Jiang father and son, it naturally gave people the impression that the Jiang father and son had stabbed them in the back. At least there were suspicions in this regard. If they didn't stab them in the back, how could Fang Yan come over on the day of the Jiang family's wedding to ask for them? Hearing Fang Yan slander him for murdering his friend and his wife for money, Qiang Longtan's face turned angry. He glared at Fang Yan fiercely and shouted, "Ignorant boy, who ordered you to come here to frame me?" "I, Qiang Longtan, have always been upright, and I've never done anything like what you've said. If I say even half a word of falsehood, let me be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Ming-Tu and his wife are my close friends and also my right-hand men in my business. I often think that if the two of them were still alive, what level would Lone2 Group have reached by now? Is it number 1 in Huaxia? Or is it number 1 in the world?" With a sad and regretful expression, Qiang Longtan said, "It's a pity that the heavens are jealous of the talented. Ming-Tu had passed away early, so he had passed all the work to me. My management ability was inferior to his, and my research ability was like the difference between a firefly and moonlight. But I can't slack off. I can only do my best to move forward. I'm also very sad that Ming-Tu is gone. But he's gone. What can I do? I took his only daughter, Chowga, to the Jiang family and treated her like my own daughter. I loved her more than Zhu Lu, and I doted on her more than Zhu Lu. Everyone here, when have you ever heard of us mistreating Chowga? Have any of you ever heard of our family treating Chowga unfairly or wrongly? She said she wants to study abroad, and I support her. I support you 100%. The only thing we argued about was that she wanted to go to the country where her parents were killed. I wouldn't let her go no matter what. It was too dangerous and chaotic there. She wants to study education, and I think it's a good idea. It's a great thing for a girl to teach and educate others. I know Chowga is smart, and I really hope that she can help me in the company after she graduates. But I respect any choice she makes." Qiang Longtan looked like an old man who had been forced into a corner by evil forces. He looked at the bride, Jiang Shangxin, with an apologetic expression on his face and said, "Yes, there's one thing that the Jiang family did not do right. It's not a secret, and I'm not afraid to say it in front of Shangxin and their relatives and friends. Zhu Lu and Chaoga have grown up under our watch. The more we look at them, the more we like them, and we hope that they can become a couple. In that case, won't our family be even closer? If they have another child, what a happy family that will be. I tried a few times and found out that Chaoga has no interest in Zhu Lu, so I gave up on the idea. Zhu Lu's mother spoils him too much, and she wanted to make this a success, so she put in a lot of effort. This is the opposite of Chaoga's original intention, and the Jiang family has let her down. Later on, Chaoga fell in love with a guy outside. She listened to slanderous rumors and argued that she wanted to split from us and take back her parents' shares. We were willing to give her the shares because they were left to her by her parents, and we wouldn't take advantage of her. But we can't split from the family. The new energy industry has been developing rapidly in the past few years, and everyone is trying to make it bigger and stronger. Why did we split a large company into two? What was that for? If we split it, what advantage would we have to compete with others? After listening to Qiang Long Tan's confession, there was a lot of discussion below the stage. That's right. I know about this too, and there was a huge argument at the time. Only someone crazy would split Longtu into two. If Longtu hadn't gone through all those things, it would definitely be developing even more fiercely now. Lu Chaoga is such a heartless woman. She was so easily fooled by that pretty boy outside that she wasted her good looks. Jiang Longten fiercely looked at Fang Yan as if he was going to fight him to the death. He said, if she wants the shares, I'll give them to her. If she wants to split from the family, I'll split from her. Children are all grown up and have their own ideas. As parents, we can only do our best to support them, and if we can't, we'll have to forgive them. Fang Yan, tell me, who got the shares Lu Chaoga took with her? Who benefited the most from her Rubik's Cube technology? If I remember correctly, you're the third largest shareholder of Chaoyan Technology, aren't you? Fang Yan, you're just a gigolo. You're just a little Miss Rosefinch who became a billionaire because of Lu Chaoga. Chaoga was so nice to you, and she gave you her whole heart. Is this how you treat her? She's missing, she's been kidnapped, and we don't even know if she's alive or dead. Instead of trying to find someone to get her back, you're here to pester me. What's in it for you? If it makes you feel better, Jiang Longtan suddenly jumped down from the stage and rushed in front of Fang Yan. Like an angry rooster, he patted his chest and said to Fang Yan, if you feel comfortable doing this, then punch me a few times, kick me a few times, as long as it can make you happy and vent your anger, then please help me find my daughter Lu Xiaoga. She's too pitiful to be alone outside. Qiang Long Tan was like a crazy father who had lost his mind. He had lost his usual gentleness and composure. He didn't care about dignity or face, and he didn't hesitate to let Fang Yan punch and kick him. Some people fought with their lives, while others fought with their power. Jiang Longtan had thrown caution to the wind at the most crucial moment and fought with his power. Therefore, he had taken control of the entire situation and gained the upper hand. No one would think that Qiang Longtan had lost his composure, because he was a father who had abandoned everything for his daughter. He was a father worthy of admiration and love. As a result, not only was Fang Yan hated by everyone present, but Lu Chaoga was also condemned as a disloyal and unfilial son. When it came to judging the situation, no one could compete with Qiang Longtan, that old fox. Fang Yan naturally couldn't punch and kick Qiang Longtan, because when Qiang Longtan finished speaking, a large group of people had already rushed over and used their bodies to shield Qiang Longtan, as if Fang Yan was really going to punch and kick Qiang Longtan. This old man was too cunning and too smart. While he was doing this, he had already calculated the reactions of the surrounding onlookers. Fang Yan looked coldly at Qiang Longtan's exquisite performance, and said in a steady and firm voice, "Don't take advantage of your seniority to play this kind of ridiculing trick. Hand Lu Chaoga to me, and I'll leave with her immediately. Otherwise, don't even think about continuing with today's wedding." Fang Yan swept a glance at Jiang Zhulu and Jiang Shangxin, the newlyweds, and said, "You guys kidnapped my woman, so I won't let you guys live happily ever after." Seeing that a group of men in black, who were in charge of security, had received Jiang Zhulio's order to come over and arrest them, Fang Yan said with an indifferent expression, "I can't win against you guys with words or acting, but I can win against you guys in a fight. Why don't you guys give it a try?" The moment he said this, the crowd quietened down instantly. The men in black who were running toward him also stopped in their tracks, and they looked at Fang Yan, who was standing at the same spot and looking at them with a look of disdain. Was this guy really not a lunatic? They had seen arrogant people before, but they had never seen someone as arrogant as him. There were hundreds of guests present, and in addition to the service and security personnel, there were more than 1,000 people in the entire Longta Club. Why did he have the courage to say something so stupid like he was the best in martial arts? If an expert were to stand out and beat him up, wouldn't he be so embarrassed? Qiang Longtan felt very aggrieved. The aura that he had painstakingly built up had been destroyed by these idiotic bodyguards just like that. Even if he couldn't win, he still had to go up and fight. There were still the police if he was injured. The police would only be able to charge him with intentional assault if they were injured. Of course, standing in his position, it wasn't very appropriate for him to get someone to go up and fight with Fang Yan at this point in time. Thus, he waved his hands to dismiss the bodyguards in black. He looked at Fang Yan and said, "I know that you, Fang Yan, are very skilled, and even if all of us here were to join forces, we wouldn't be a match for you. I didn't kidnap Lu Chaoga, and it's impossible for me to kidnap Lu Chaoga either. Otherwise, you can beat the entire Jiang family to the ground and search for them yourself. Or you can help me find Lu Chaoga. No matter what, don't stand here and waste time." "I won't waste my time, and I won't waste my time saving people," Fang Yan said loudly. "I have evidence to prove that the Jiang family kidnapped Lu Chaoga." Chapter 456. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Fang Yan's shout of, "I have evidence," made the atmosphere reach a new climax once again. This climax was hidden and buried. It was like a volcano in the deep sea. No matter how intense the eruption was, there were only a few ripples on the surface of the water. Everyone looked at each other with deep meaning in their eyes, but they didn't exchange any words. At such a sensitive moment, no one was willing to let others get hold of their weakness or show their excessive enthusiasm over some small details. It was a taboo in etiquette for these reputable people. Fang Yan didn't come to the Jiang family without any evidence, but he had solid evidence. Could it be that the Jiang family was really the mastermind behind the kidnapping of Lu Chaoga? What evidence did he have to prove that the Jiang family was involved in or directly plotting the kidnapping of Lu Chaoga? However, since he had evidence, why didn't he directly call the police and arrest the Jiang family? Everyone was waiting quietly, and many were secretly looking forward to it. If Fang Yan really threw out some strong evidence, the Jiang father and son would be completely thrown into the abyss today, never to rise again. Jiang Zhulu clenched his fists and shouted, "Fang Yan, do you think my Jiang family has no one?" The matter was obviously not done by the Jiang family. What evidence did he have? What evidence could he have? Even if he had evidence, it would be a frame-up. Fang Yan didn't yield an inch and pressed forward step by step, really forcing Qiang Longtan and Jiang Zhulu. This was Jiang Zhulio's wedding. The bigger the matter was, the more chaotic the scene would be, and the more embarrassed the Jiang family would be. If the matter of today's wedding were to be spread out, would the Jiang family still have the face to see others in the future? This Fang Yan's mind was too vicious, and he was too good at choosing the right time. The best way was to keep the peace and end it here. However, this was obviously not what Fang Yan wanted to see. Jiang Longtan's sharp eyes were like needles that pierced Fang Yan. His voice was calm and dignified as he said, I just thought that you're a junior. This junior's way of doing things is a bit out of line, but there's still a reason that can be forgiven. Now I think you are a vicious beast that eats people without spitting out the bones. Fong Yen, you're forcing the Jiang family into a corner. Fong Yen, I know you hate our Jiang family. I know you want to destroy our Jiang family. Since you're here today, it seems that you've made sufficient preparations. Since you insist on doing this, I am not in a position to stop you. You say you have evidence, then show me your evidence. If you can't produce any evidence, I, Qiang Long Tan, will kill myself on your body today. The Jiangs are all businessmen, but they are also hot-blooded. A tall, thin, and gentlemanly middle-aged man walked over. He looked at Fong Yen with an unfriendly gaze and said, This is the first time we've met, but I've heard of your name for a long time. Every time there's something related to you, you're the one who messes with others. Fong Yen didn't like hearing this. He coldly glanced at the middle-aged man and said, I'm very interested in every time you talk about something related to me. What are those things? You must not remember, right? 3 years ago, the Maple Leaf Club held a charity auction in Yanjing City. It was also you who messed with others and almost caused the auction to be cancelled. The middle-aged man said aloud, It's the same this time. This is a wedding, the most sacred and happiest moment for a couple of families. You jumped out and made a scene. Your words were vicious, your means were cruel, and you forced and humiliated people to death. Aren't you afraid of retribution? Fong Yen sneered and said, I'm sorry, but I still remember what you said. 3 years ago, when I returned to Yanjing for the festival, I heard that the music addict was going to perform at a gathering with my friends. I shamelessly asked someone to help me bring her into the Maple Leaf Club. I didn't expect that there would be people who didn't like us. They just scolded us a little and endured it. Who asked you to be the young masters of a famous family? We're just poor children from a small family. But you still want to step on us and never be able to rise again. We can't bear it anymore. So what if you're rich? You can bully people just because you're rich. 3 years ago, I retaliated after being bullied. 3 years later, it's still the same. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I won't let them off easily. Return Lu Chaoga to me. I'll turn around and leave. Your wedding can continue. Otherwise, I'll fight you to the death. You're twisting words and forcing logic. The middle-aged man sneered. Didn't you say that you have evidence to prove that the Jiang family is the mastermind behind the kidnapping of Lu Chaoga? Then show us your evidence. If you don't have any evidence, the Jiang family will demand justice from you. Jiang Fingxing was a direct descendant of the Jiang family. He was highly respected in the Jiang family because of his outstanding ability. Some of the important investments of the Jiang family required his approval. He was also Jiang Shangxin's father. This time, he represented the Jiang family to attend his daughter and Jiang Zhuliu's wedding. Naturally, he hated Fong Yen in every way for such a thing to happen during the wedding. His words on behalf of the Jiang family naturally had the power to make people take him seriously. Sure enough, the way some people looked at Fong Yen changed when they heard Jiang Fingxing mention the Jiang family's name. Everyone had heard that Fong Yen didn't have a harmonious relationship with the Jiang family. However, today, an important figure from the Jiang family stood out to warn Fong Yen. The meaning behind it was different. Don't threaten me. Fong Yen said calmly. Jiang Junling did something like this in the past. I slapped him back, you're the same. What a good slap back. I, Jiang Fingxing, will stand here and see how you're going to stir up trouble. Jiang Fingxing's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. His wife, Li Yun, quickly walked over and comforted him. She advised him not to get angry. Where's the evidence? Kang Long Tan stared at Fong Yen and shouted, Fong Yen, where's the evidence you mentioned? Master, returned Miss Lu to him. The old butler, who was standing beside him, said. Boom. It was like a volcano erupting on the ground. Lava suddenly filled the sky. Everyone could no longer remain calm. No one continued to stay silent. Heavens, the old butler of the Jiang family actually stood out to accuse the boss. Could it really be the Jiang family? It's hard to guard against a thief from the same family. The Jiang family father and son never thought that they would be defeated by their own family. Kang Long Tan's performance just now was really amazing. This old fox, he's really capable of anything. No one thought that the old butler of the Jiang family would stand out and accuse Jiang Longtan of asking him to release Lu Jua. This knife was aimed straight at the heart. The pain was bone deep. Slap. Jiang Zhulu slapped the old butler's face. His eyes were bloodshot as he roared, Old dog Lu, tell me clearly. Who do you think should release Lu Jua? The old butler's original name was Lu Tong. He was an old man who had followed Kang Long Tan to fight for the world. He was the person that Kang Long Tan trusted the most. He was also Jiang Longtan's brain and heart. Just like how every king had some dirty and evil things that needed someone to clean up. For example, the eunuchs and the Imperial Secret Service in ancient times. Lu Tong was the confidant that Kang Long Tan had chosen to clean up these most private matters. It was also because of his recognition of Lu Tong that he entrusted the future hope of the Jiang family to him. Jiang Zhulu had deep feelings for Lu Tong. He had always called him Uncle Lu. He had never treated him as a servant. So, now that Lu Tong had stood out to stab the father and son, it was equivalent to betraying Jiang Zhulu emotionally. Even with Jiang Zhulu's years of self-control, he couldn't bear to lash out in anger. Lu Tong's face was slapped, but he still stood in the same place. He looked like he was ready to be whipped. Young master, I watched Miss Lu grow up. We're a family. There's really no need to be so ruthless. Jiang Zhulu was even more anxious and angry. He wanted to lash out again, but Kang Long Tan grabbed his arm. Zhulu, stop. Kang Long Tan said in a hoarse voice. Jiang Zhulu didn't dare to go against his father's words. He glared at Lu Tong viciously. If there weren't so many people present, he would have beaten this dog slave to death. Kang Long Tan patted Lu Tong's shoulder and said, I'm usually too busy with work, so I let you discipline Zhulu. He has feelings for you and has always treated you like family. That's why he's a little too emotional. As an elder, don't take it to heart. The child doesn't know any better. Master, I'm not angry. Lu Tong said. His expression was calm, but he was clenching his fists tightly. He was currently suffering in his heart. No matter what the reason was, standing out to report his master was a betrayal in the eyes of everyone. From now on, no one would ever trust him again. Zhulu doesn't treat you like an outsider. The Jiang family doesn't treat you like an outsider either. I even treat you like my best brother. Kang Long Tan's voice was hoarse, and he looked very emotional. Master, your love for me is as heavy as a mountain. I'll never forget it. Lu Tong said with red eyes. It's not easy for everyone to live. Maybe you have your difficulties, and I understand you. But I don't understand. Why? What can he give you? If you want, you can ask me for it. We're brothers. As long as you're willing to ask, I'll give you everything. Lu Tong, what can Fong Yen give you? What did he use to bribe you? Master, Fong Yen didn't bribe me. Lu Tong shook his head in denial. I've been by your side for a long time. When you and Ming-Tu first established Long-Tu Group, I was behind you. I was your trusted and taken care of. I watched Zhu Lu grow up, and so did Chowga. I don't care what conflicts or grudges you have, and I can't do anything about it. But Chowga has already lost her parents and left the Jiang family. Shouldn't we give her a way out? Isn't this a little too violent? Lu Tong bowed deeply to Qiang Long Tan and said, Master, let Chowga go. She's still young and doesn't know any better. Give her a way out. Chapter 457. Lu Tong denied being bribed by Fang Yen and insisted that it was Qiang Long Tan and his son who had kidnapped Lu Chowga. This was equivalent to nailing the father and son of the Jiang family to the pillar of shame. If Lu Tong was someone else, there wouldn't be such an effect. However, Lu Tong was the closest person to the father and son of the Jiang family. The power of this stab from him was so shocking. Old dog, I'm going to kill you. Jiang Zhulu roared. The person closest to you hurt you the most. He finally experienced the cruel feeling of being stabbed by someone close to him. Once again, he impulsively rushed towards Lu Tong, but was stopped by Feng Xing, who was standing beside him. Jiang Fengxing was a smart man. He knew that since Fang Yen had a way to get Lu Tong to testify against the father and son of the Jiang family, he must have something on Lu Tong or had made a deal with him. Lu Tong refused to let go. If Jiang Zhulu attacked him again, he would be confirming his crime. In the eyes of outsiders, he was angry out of humiliation and had a guilty conscience. It was extremely unwise to hurt someone in front of others. Zhulu, calm down. Jiang Fengxing pressed his palm on Jiang Zhulio's shoulder so that he couldn't move at all. He said, You will only fall into their trap if you continue like this. Dad! Jiang Zhulu shouted with reddened eyes, looking extremely aggrieved. He was calling his dad Jiang Fengxing. Although his and Jiang Shangxin's wedding had yet to be completed, the two of them were already husband and wife. In everyone's eyes, they were already a couple. This wedding was just a formality. In the end, it wasn't completed and Fang Yen came over to ruin it. Now, he had no choice but to consider a problem. Had their wedding already been completed, or should they choose another day to hold it again? It's all right. Jiang Fengxing patted Jiang Zhulio's shoulder and said, Nothing will happen. He's just a clown. He can't hold up in public. Lu Tong, you're killing me. Qiang Long Tan gritted his teeth and said. Why is it like this between us brothers? Master, if you let Chowga go, I'll kowtow to you to atone for my sins. She's an orphan, poor girl. Lu Tong clenched his fists and stared straight into Qiang Long Tan's eyes, saying stubbornly. Forget it. Qiang Long Tan weakly waved his hand and said, You have the ability to kill people's hearts, and you also have the ability to kill people. We, father and son, admit defeat. We don't have Lu Chowga, and we can't release her. If you want to hit or scold, kill or call the police, it's up to you. There are so many people here today, and they are all very good witnesses. Qiang Long Tan did not refute, nor did he resist. He looked dejected and resigned to his fate. Dad, Jiang Zhulu was so anxious that his eyes were red. He shouted, We are innocent, why should we admit it? They don't have any evidence. What right do they have to slander us? Let Fang Yen and that treacherous old dog produce evidence. As long as they produce evidence, I will kowtow to them and admit my guilt. Otherwise, don't expect me to bow my head. Don't expect me to admit defeat. Young people tended to be aggressive, and aggressive people tended to be impulsive. Impulsive people could do anything. Jiang Zhulu didn't have the calm and elegant demeanor of the four young masters of watching. He was like an enraged cheetah, growling and wanting to charge at his opponent again and again. Enough. Qiang Long Tan suddenly turned around and shouted at Jiang Zhulu. What do you want? What can you do? It was as if someone had poured a bucket of cold water on top of his head in a world of ice and snow, and Jiang Zhulu suddenly came to his senses. Yes, what did he want? What could he do? Explain. Even Uncle Lu, who was closest to him, was on Fang Yan's side and accused him and his son of being the kidnappers. How could he explain himself? Even if he had 10,000 mouths, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. Fight? Fight with who? Fang Yan. Didn't the willow tree try? Was he willing to become the second willow tree? Jiang Zhulu suddenly felt a great sense of helplessness. It was like an ant finding it hard to lift an elephant, or a young eagle finding it hard to soar into the sky. He had the heart to kill the thief, but he couldn't. All this time, Jiang Zhulu had thought that he was powerful and omnipotent. It turned out that he had been wronged before, and he had been bullied until he couldn't lift a fist. He had experienced this twice. Fang Yan had given him the first time, and Fang Yan had given him the second time. Jiang Zhulu had never been so depressed before and his body was turning cold. After scolding his son, Qiang Long Tan turned to Fang Yan and said, "You win. You're the biggest winner today. Let me repeat myself. I didn't kidnap Chowga, so I can't hand her over to you. If you don't trust me, you can leave it to the police. I think they'll make a reasonable decision. No matter who they hand her over to, the criminal will be severely punished. Let me say this to you and your son, those who commit unjust acts bring about their own destruction." Fang Yan turned to leave and said, "Let's go." He said, "Let's go." Who would want to leave with Fang Yan? After the scandal between Fang Yan and the Jiang family, wouldn't leaving with Fang Yan mean breaking off all ties with the Jiang family? Many people looked at Fang Yan sarcastically. Did this idiot know anything about the ways of the world? More people were confused and wondered where Fang Yan got his confidence from. Why did he think that someone would bet on him? No matter how humiliated the Jiang father and son were today, they were still one of the four major families of Hua City. How could he compete with the Jiang family? They didn't expect that someone would really leave with Fang Yan, and it wasn't just one or two. Lu Shu was the first to stand up. Lu Shu didn't sit in a wheelchair today. He came with crutches. After hearing Fang Yan say, "Let's go," Lu Shu immediately stood up with the crutches beside him and followed Fang Yan to the door of the banquet hall without saying a word. Lan Shanggu's eyes widened. He felt like his lungs were about to explode from anger. Lu Shu was really a good-for-nothing. Just now, he was still teaching him to cooperate and not rely on others. He had to maintain his dignity and independence. Fang Yan's words were still floating in the air when you followed him like a dog. Was this what you meant by cooperation and not relying on others? Was this the so-called dignity and attitude you showed? Were you lying to me that I was uncultured? Of course, Lan Shanggu cursed Lu Shu in his heart. This person wasn't honest, but his speed wasn't slow either. After the willow tree stood up and left with Fang Yan, he immediately became the second person to stand up. He jogged to catch up with the willow tree and pretended to hold the willow tree's arm. He said, "Walk slowly, I'll hold you." Lu Shu unceremoniously shook off Lan Shanggu's arm. "If you want to leave, just leave. Do you need to find such a lame excuse?" Two of the four talents of watching were taken away by Fang Yan at once. This was worth pondering. It should be known that whether it was the lame Lu Shu or the careless Lan Shanggu, they were both core figures that the Lu and Lan families were grooming as the next successors of their families. Now, they were both young talents who had a say in their families. After Fang Yan and the Jiang family had a showdown, they stood up to support Fang Yan without hesitation. Then, wasn't it obvious? They were more optimistic about Fang Yan. In other words, they thought that Fang Yan could bring them more benefits, more than what the Jiang family could give them. Moreover, the Lu family and the Jiang family were in-laws. Even their relatives had abandoned the Jiang family. Wasn't it obvious? First, the guests from the vassal families of the Lan and Lu families who came to congratulate them stood up. Their backbone had already left. What was the point of them staying? Then, some of the partners who had close relationships with the Lan and Lu families. They naturally had to follow in the footsteps of their partners. The hearts of the people scattered. The scene went out of control. In the end, even the guests who were on good terms with the Jiang family or had business dealings with them stood up and left. Some people even greeted Qiang Longtan out of respect. Some people lowered their heads and left, afraid that Qiang Longtan would hold them back if they were too slow. The banquet hall that was previously bustling with activity and could accommodate hundreds of people was now mostly empty. It looked miserable and cold. Lu Tong bowed deeply to Qiang Longtan. He glanced at Jiang Zhulu, whose eyes were red and bloodshot. Then, he turned around and followed the crowd outside. Traitor! Someone cursed at Lu Tong's back. Lu Tong tried his best to straighten his back and walked toward the main entrance with his head held high. Jiang Fingxing walked over and patted Qiang Longtan's shoulder. He said, "Old Jiang, don't take it to heart. Everything will be over soon. They will regret their choices today." Even though he said that, he and his wife still dragged their daughter away from this annoying place. Qiang Longtan's wife wanted to comfort her husband and son, but Qiang Longtan waved her away. Qiang Longtan chased everyone away. The banquet hall that could accommodate hundreds of people was only left with the Jiang father and son. Qiang Longtan sat down on the steps of the tea stage. He reached out to Jiang Zhulu and asked, "Do you have a cigarette?" Jiang Longtan did not smoke. He would only smoke once in a while when he was feeling extremely agitated. Obviously, Qiang Longtan's current mood could no longer be described as extremely frustrated. Since it was Jiang Zhulio's wedding today, he naturally had a few packs of cigarettes in his pocket. He took out a cigarette and passed it to his father. Then, he took out a lighter and lit it up for his father. Then, he took out a cigarette and lit it up. Following his father's example, he sat down on the red carpet without caring about his image. Qiang Longtan took a deep puff of the cigarette and allowed the warm smoke to filter through his lungs. Then, he exhaled it gently. He looked in the direction of the empty main entrance and sighed softly. "I haven't seen this kid for 3 years, and he has already become powerful. The younger generation will surpass the older." Chapter 458. "Dad, you're still praising him at this point," Jiang Zhulu said in a dissatisfied tone. If Jiang Zhulu had to make a list of the people he hated the most, the first would be Fang Yan, the second would be Fang Yan, and the third would still be Fang Yan. There was only one name in the top 10, Fang Yan. Today was his wedding day, and it was ruined by that hateful guy. The wedding wasn't finished. The guests left, and the bride left. Which woman didn't want a beautiful and unforgettable wedding? This wedding was indeed unforgettable, and it would appear in every nightmare. Which parent didn't want their children to be happy and beautiful? The Jiang family must be very disappointed to be humiliated like this on their wedding day, right? Fang Yan was the opponent he wanted to get rid of the most at this moment. Because no man could endure such humiliation. Qiang Longtan smoked the cigarette in his hand seriously, not caring about his son's attitude toward Fang Yan. He said, "Fang Yan used to be very smart, but that's all. He only knew how to counterattack, but he never knew how to take the initiative. He was strong, but he was weak. Or rather, he was kind. He could even forgive Chowga for using him. Lu Shu wanted to kill him, but didn't he let Lu Shu live? You can't say he's kind. Jiang Zhulu didn't want to hear anyone say a good word about Fang Yan. Not even his own father. He's just weak and afraid to take responsibility. You can say that. Qiang Long Tan didn't refute his son's words this time. Father died a tragic death in front of his house, and he mourned for 3 years at Swallow Dock. It seems that he's understood a lot of things in the past 3 years, and his personality has changed a lot. He knows how to take the initiative, and it's fine when he doesn't move, but when he does, it'll kill. Kill who? Jiang Zhulu said fiercely. He accused us of kidnapping Lu Chowga, but what evidence does he have? If he can't, why should others believe him? Is there really no one who believes it? Qiang Long Tan stared into his son's eyes and asked. Jiang Zhulu had been afraid of his father since he was a child. He was not used to looking into his father's eyes at such a close distance. He turned around and took a puff of his cigarette. Even if a small number of people believe it, the Jiang family's reputation will only be affected a little. Do you really think that only a small number of people will believe it? Qiang Long Tan was not satisfied with his son's answer and asked again. No one listens to Fang Yan's words, but that old dog Lu Tong's knife is too deep. Jiang Zhulu became flustered and exasperated. If he didn't jump out to testify against us, how could we be in such a difficult situation? This is all part of Fang Yan's plan. Qiang Long Tan smiled coldly and said, after today, the Jiang family's reputation will be ruined. Dad, Jiang Zhulu was unwilling to admit the truth his father had said. This is the truth. That brat was too ruthless and too accurate. Do you really think he came to take Lu Chowga away? He came to take away our Jiang family's dignity and face. He wants our Jiang family's reputation to be ruined, to become the talk of watching and a laughing stock in their hearts. Haven't you noticed the frequency of his actions? From the moment he jumped out with a face full of anger and shouted that I didn't agree, he started digging holes and burying us father and son in them. He said he had evidence in his hands, so why didn't he say it the moment he appeared? He just wanted to use some time to spread the news of Lu Chowga's kidnapping. He wanted to tell the whole story in front of everyone. He wanted to build momentum for himself and Lu Chowga, so that everyone would automatically associate it in their hearts. So that they would subconsciously suspect us father and son to be the culprits behind Lu Chowga's kidnapping. Qiang Long Tan looked at his son, Jiang Zhulu, and asked, did we kidnap Lu Chowga? Of course not, Jiang Zhulu denied flatly. How could we do such a thing? We know we didn't. Do the guests here still believe it? Will the people of watching who didn't come but heard the news believe it? I believe, at this moment, this matter has already spread to every corner of watching, right? Whether Lu Chowga was kidnapped by us or not, it is no longer important to us now. Because, everyone will see us as the number one suspect. This is the reason why that brat came here to cause trouble. He wanted to pull us down from the high platform. No, he wanted to step us into the mud. Qiang Long Tan's thoughts were clearer and crueler, and he said, so, Lu Tong appeared. If it wasn't to destroy our Jiang family, why would he throw out such an important chess piece like Lu Tong at a time like this? He placed him beside us father and son, so that he could continuously pass on the information they want. Wouldn't this show the value of a chess piece? Lu Tong, why did he betray us? Didn't our Jiang family treat him well enough? We never treated him like a slave, we treated him like family. When Lu Tong was mentioned, Jiang Zhulio's emotions fluctuated more intensely. When he was very young, his father handed him over to Lu Tong to take care of and teach him. Other than his father, Lu Tong was his closest and most trusted elder. Unexpectedly, when the Jiang family was in danger, he was the first one to jump out and stab the Jiang family. What's so hard to understand? Qiang Long Tan shook his head and sighed, a little disappointed with his son's reaction. There is no such thing as loyalty in this world. Loyalty only comes from the lack of bargaining chips for betrayal. In the future, you must remember this in your heart. In this world, there is no one worthy of your trust, only those who are worthy of being used. I'll remember, Jiang Zhulu said, as if he was enlightened. Lu Tong, that old dog, taught me a lesson. I'll never forget it. Lu Tong's knife didn't kill us, nor could it kill us. But it left a fatal wound on our bodies. Qiang Long Tan stepped on the cigarette but in his hand and rubbed it forcefully. This was the second knife that Fang Yan prepared. It was also the fiercest and most unexpected knife. Jiang Zhulu looked puzzled. Since they already have Lu Tong in their hands, why didn't they just ask him to take out their so-called evidence? How could such a show end so hastily after all this talk and no action? Isn't it a little too stupid? Because they don't have evidence, Qiang Long Tan said. Because Lu Tong doesn't have evidence that you and I kidnapped Lu Chaoga. Then we should make that old dog Lu Tong stay and force him to take out the evidence in front of everyone. If he can't take it out, won't we be cleared of all suspicion? Can he stay? Qiang Long Tan smiled bitterly. Lu Tong has been by our side for so many years, how many secrets does he know? He doesn't have evidence that we kidnapped Lu Chaoga, but he has a lot of evidence on other things. If we make him stay, he will spill everything. How can we face that situation? You mean, this is also Fang Yan's plan? When Qiang Long Tan mentioned Fang Yan, his face once again showed a complicated smile of hatred and admiration. He knows we can't stay, he knows we don't dare to. He threw Lu Tong out to stab us, that's the value of the willow tree. He didn't follow up with another attack, so we can only silently endure it. Fang Yan is that smart. Jiang Zhulu didn't want to believe it. He was more willing to believe that it was all a coincidence. Zhulu, don't tell me you can't see the deeper meaning behind each of these events. If you still don't understand after coming this far, compared to Fang Yan, you are still far behind. Qiang Long Tan said with some sadness. Who would want to admit that their son was not as good as someone else? Who would want to give up their father's dignity and pride? But the facts were laid out in front of him. Even if Qiang Long Tan had a million reasons to speak up for his son, he couldn't say that his son was better than Fang Yan. He also prepared the third knife for our Jiang Kong. Qiang Long Tan's palm gently stroked the thick red carpet under his butt. The first knife destroyed our prestige, making us unable to stand on the side of justice. As soon as he appeared, he packaged himself as a righteous and fair party, which is why I fought with him for the right to speak. We can't let them say everything, that way we can only be led by the nose. The second knife destroyed our influence. He used Lu Tong to destroy the reputation and connections that our Jiang family has accumulated for 100 years. Didn't you notice? Apart from the people of the Jiang family, no one else stood up for us father and son, because Lu Tong stood up. The moment Lu Tong stepped forward, he silenced everyone else. Even the people closest to us stood up and stabbed us in the back. What reason did they have to stand up for us? What reason did they have to fight alongside us? Our prestige was destroyed, our power was disintegrated. But our spirit was not dispersed. So, Fang Yan prepared the last knife for us. The third knife was when Fang Yan left, Lu Shulan, Gu Gu, and the others also left. Their departure led to the departure of even more people, and in the end, the situation got out of hand. Why is our Jiang family known as one of the 4 great families of watching? It's because there are people who fear the power of the Jiang family, and look up to the Jiang family. With a shout, people gathered. But, after Fang Yan's third knife stab, our Jiang family, this elephant, was completely dragged down by him, and fell to the ground in a very unsightly manner. Even those people we didn't look at before dared to leave. What right do we have to be one of the 4 great families of watching? Qiang Long Tan's smile was bitter, and also very bitter. From today onwards, the Jiang family will be removed from the 4 great families of watching. Chapter 459. From today onwards, the Jiang clan would be removed from the 4 major clans. This was the most serious consequence that Jiang Zhulu could imagine. It wasn't the sacrifice of a single member of the clan, but the entire Jiang clan would be buried in a deep pit. In other words, he would no longer be able to speak equally with the people in Lu Shulan Valley. Those who used to look up to and admire him would also abandon him. In the future, he would no longer be one of the 4 prodigies of watching. There would be someone new to replace him. Although he had never cared about such intangible things before, he was now starting to worry about personal gains and losses. It was hard for him to imagine that when people talked about the 4 prodigies of watching in front of him, they wouldn't mention Jiang Zhulu. Instead, they would casually mention another unfamiliar name. The higher one climbs, the harder one falls. This was the burden that he would have to bear in the future. He couldn't believe it, and he didn't want to believe it. Dad, is the situation really that serious? Jiang Zhulu asked in a sorrowful voice. Yes. Qiang Long Tan said, is it hard to accept? How is it possible? The Jiang clan is still the Jiang clan, it's just a little ugly. How can we be removed from the 4 major clans? Who can replace the Jiang clan? The Lu clan? Or the Fang clan? Qiang Long Tan knew that it was hard for his son to accept. How could he be willing to accept it? He was the core of this generation of the Jiang clan, the head of the Jiang clan. The Jiang clan had risen to the peak in his hands, but was it also going to fall into hell because of him? However, he was looking at the long term. When Lu Tong stood up and stabbed him, he had already guessed that there would be such a possibility. He had already begun to disperse the pressure in the depths of his heart, so he could now accept it calmly. However, Jiang Zhulu had just realized the severity of the situation, so it was inevitable that he would lose his composure like this. No one is afraid from afar, and no one is surrounding us. Words cannot be moved, and promises cannot be tempted. How can a clan like this still be one of the 4 major clans? In the eyes of those people, the status of the Jiang clan is far inferior to that of Lu Chaoga, Fang Yan, or the other Su, Huang, and Yi clans. If they had a choice, they would also stand on the opposing side. This is the general trend. Even if we cling to the signboard of the 4 great clans, what can we do? A family that is ridiculed, belittled, and even ignored by the outside world, what does that mean to us? It's just a joke for no reason. Qiang Long Tan sighed softly and said, that's why I said the younger generation will surpass us in time. Fang Yan sharpened his sword for 3 years, and this sword pierced straight into the heart of our Jiang family, leaving us no room for resistance. To live in the same era as such an opponent is your fortune, but also your sorrow. Is he really that scheming? Did he really have a flawless plan? Even you don't have any way to fight back. Even if I'm inferior to him, how can he possibly be your opponent? Jiang Zhulu asked unwillingly. He didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to believe it. He still remembered the first time he met Fang Yan. At that time, he was still a somewhat inexperienced rookie. Except for his vicious mouth, there was almost nothing about him that people should respect or be vigilant against. Just a rookie. He once commented on Fang Yan in front of the willow tree. Now, that rookie had been reborn, and turned into a phoenix that soared above the 9 heavens. After the willow tree was disfigured by him, because of the Rubik's Cube, it was tied to the same chariot, unable to move. If it resisted even a little, he would kick it out of the fast-moving train, and then the Lu family would instantly abandon it in some unknown corner. By using the willow tree, Fong Yen was also insulting the willow tree. By leading the Lu family forward, he was also whipping the Lu family's butt. This kid, every move made people gnash their teeth in anger, but it was also hard to defend against. What about himself? He was even more miserable than the willow tree. It's good for young people to suffer some setbacks. Right now, Fong Yan's way of doing things is both experienced and vicious. Even if people know that he's slandering them, even if they know that he's digging a hole to bury them, we still have to hold hands and jump in together. Does this kind of growth have nothing to do with his father's departure? Qiang Long Tan patted Jiang Zhulio's shoulder and smiled. Maybe, after I leave, you will also grow a little faster, Dad. Jiang Zhulio's face was full of shock. Don't say that, I feel like I'm still far behind you. Give me some more time to study. Qiang Long Tan smiled. Your grandfather said that I'm a yellow ox and a dog. I have the diligence and patience of a yellow ox, but I also have the savagery and cunning of a dog. I have a lot of confidence in my life. I thought that I'd run amok for my entire life, but I didn't think that, at my old age, I would be bullied by a young boy to this extent. He brought a large basin of fresh dog's blood and said, Qiang Long Tan, I'm going to pour this basin of dog's blood on your head, and then he did it. We didn't have any ability to retaliate. Just now, did you feel especially powerless? There will be many more days in the future. If I don't get my revenge, then I'm not a man. Jiang Zhulu sneered. He can be arrogant for a moment, but can he be arrogant for the rest of his life? Don't seek revenge for revenge's sake. If there are benefits to be gained, why don't we all sit down and drink tea, chat, and become friends? Qiang Long Tan tried to console his son. A person doesn't live to fight. That kind of life is too dark, and there's no sense of accomplishment. What we want is to control the situation, to maximize our benefits, to become the best person in a certain field. This kind of life is worth looking forward to. Jiang Zhulu pondered for a long time, then looked at his father and asked, then, who kidnapped Lu Chaoga? Who knows? Qiang Long Tan shook his head. Everyone who covets the Rubik's Cube has this possibility. Even Fong Yen could be the mastermind. Fong Yen. Jiang Zhulu was shocked. Did he direct and act out this show? He directed this show himself, then threw the dirty water on us, and finally became the biggest winner in this matter. With this kid's scheming methods, it's not surprising that he could do something like this. Qiang Long Tan said in a low voice. Jiang Zhulu sucked in a breath of cold air. It was only then that he felt fear. Fear because he had a rival named Fong Yen. A guy like this, what wouldn't he do? Qiang Long Tan looked at Jiang Zhulu and asked, if you were Fong Yen, what would you do? Do what? What would I do to Lu Chaoga? A hint of panic flashed in Jiang Zhulio's eyes as he said, I don't know, you really don't know, or you don't want me to know. Jiang Zhulu gritted his teeth and said with a firm voice, I guess we'll never see each other again. Qiang Long Tan nodded and said, that's the best choice. It seems he thinks the same as you. If Lu Chaoga was kidnapped, then let her disappear from this world forever. Fong Yen was originally the third largest shareholder of Chaoyan Technology. If Lu Chaoga really disappeared, then with his relationship with the Qin family, they could work together to divide the shares under Lu Chaoga's name and take control of Chaoyan Technology. Fong Yen would soar to the sky because of this. When Fong Yen walked out of the Longtu Club entrance, a GMC off-road RV was already parked on the side of the road waiting. Seeing Fong Yen walk over, the front passenger door opened and Qining jumped out to help open the back door. After Fong Yen got in the car, Qining was about to close the door when he saw Fong Yan's eyes. He stopped what he was doing and waited by the side with the door open. Lu Tong followed closely behind and got in the car, followed by Lu Shu, who limped over, and his old friend Lan Golu. Fang Yan nodded and Qining tactfully closed the door. When Qining jumped back into the front passenger seat again, the RV slowly started. Lan Shanggu looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, "Master, I know you have a lot of things to take care of when you come back, so I didn't rush over to bother you. I was thinking of finding time to treat you to a drink. I didn't expect to meet you today." "There's no hurry to drink," Fang Yan said. Lu Shu looked at Fang Yan and asked, "Miss Lu Chaoga, was she really kidnapped?" "She was really kidnapped," Fang Yan said in a low voice. The atmosphere in the car suddenly became heavy, and even breathing became more difficult than before. Lan Shanggu didn't speak, and Lu Shu didn't speak either. Lu Tong lowered his head and pretended not to hear their conversation. Seeing their expressions, Fang Yan understood what they were thinking and said, "She's very important to me, I want to save her." Seeing Fang Yan's attitude, Lan Shanggu and Lu Shu clearly felt a lot more relaxed. If Fang Yan had his own selfish motives and was willing to abandon that woman, they would have to make a choice again. Would they be loyal to Fang Yan, or loyal to their previous partners? The answer to this question was self-evident. Lan Shanggu took out his phone from his pocket and dialed a number, then said, "Find Lu Chaoga." Lu Shu also took out his phone and sent 3 words to a number that wasn't recorded on his phone, "Lu Chaoga." Fang Yan sighed softly and said, "Everyone, from now on, will be in the same boat, sharing wealth and prosperity. If the boat is about to capsize or fall apart, you can find someone else, I'll tell you to take care. But if we're sailing smoothly, and there's still someone who's half-hearted, then don't blame me for being impolite. Even if the boat is about to capsize or fall apart, do I have any other choice?" Lu Shu asked back. The answer to this question had already expressed his attitude. Lan Shanggu smiled and said, "Master, from now on, I'll follow your lead." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.